Part 21. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 208. Chapter 203 Surrender. The Koken team probably took this road and went to the waste treatment facility, right? It was not difficult to find the Koken team, as long as they found the latest traces of the battle. Luo Guang and Jill walked in the Atlantic Research Institute. Because Luo Guang did not carry a rifle, Jill handed the charged particle rifle directly to Luo Guang. They were probably forced to go there, right? Jill said, looking at the traces on the ground and the direction where the zombies fell. How could someone like Morpheus hide in a dirty place like a waste treatment facility? The people in that team should not be stupid enough to not know this, so Jill made this guess. Luo Guang nodded. Although the Koken team took the wrong road, he did not intend to blame the Koken team. In the storage room, he saw the traces of the Koken team's battle against the Fat Man's biological weapons. At least the Koken team solved the giant monster, so excluding Colossus, Luo Guang was quite satisfied with the Koken team. However, this was only the first battle, and the Koken team lost personnel, which made Luo Guang a little worried that the Koken team would be wiped out later. However, in terms of antibiochemical, the Koken team has the least experience in the GIMZ team, so casualties are inevitable, but it is abnormal to have casualties so early. Alas. Looking at the scars on the dead GIMZ members, Luo Guang judged that someone was caught by the feet of the zombies that suddenly appeared at the corner, and then fell down, and was stepped on the head by the giant who chased up. Unfortunately, this guy's upper body was stepped on by the giant, so Luo Guang couldn't even recover the dog tag, and didn't know who died. In this way, the recruit scenario training ground that Samus of the Red Claws created, which combines various enemies, is indeed very helpful. If the dead GIMZ members have more training, the probability of survival will probably increase a lot. Jill saluted the GIMZ members who died, expressed his respect for their sacrifice for the antibiochemical cause, followed Luo Guang's pace and continued to move forward. Are these wasps also biochemical weapons? Did a biochemical virus leak here? The two entered the waste treatment facility at this time, and Jill looked at the dead bodies of the hornets on the ground and said. According to Jill's experience in Raccoon City, most of these creatures mutated due to the leakage of biochemical viruses. If a virus leak occurred here, the difficulty of cleaning up the virus here would increase sharply. These hornets immediately started civil strife after losing their queen, but the problem was that there was not much difference between these hornets, which led to the fact that these hornets had not been able to fight to a result after the Koken team left here. After Luo Guang and Jill finished off the dying hornets and set the hive on fire, they looked at the hornets on the ground and couldn't help but want to use a flamethrower to disinfect them. This was also the instinctive idea of these antibiochemical frontline fighters. Continuing forward, Luo Guang arrived at the place where the Nautilus lived. After a little exploration, he soon understood the ability of the Nautilus. As long as he avoided those torpedo boys, the only advantage of the Nautilus was its shell defense. Luo Guang couldn't show off his new ability, but he could try the power of the particle rifle behind him. The particle beam hit the Nautilus shell directly, and then the shell of the Nautilus was directly shattered into slag. The power was indeed good, but the firing rate was a bit slow and could not be fired quickly. While thinking, Luo Guang avoided the attack of the torpedo boy and waited for Jill to give the Nautilus a fatal blow. Jill quickly dodged to the left, avoiding the torpedo boy who jumped up from the water and hit him, then pulled out the safety of the grenade in his hand and threw the grenade into the hole in the shell. With a crisp explosion, the Nautilus no longer reacted like before, and the torpedo boy wandering in the water ran around like crazy, hit the wall by the water, and exploded directly. They didn't know why the torpedo boy blew himself up, but Luo Guang and Jill didn't investigate further. They followed the traces of the battle of the Koken team and continued to move forward. After passing through several areas, they came to the door of a room, and their traces disappeared here. Hey, Is anyone there? He was looking for his own people, but Luo Guang didn't push the door in just to be on the safe side, but shouted directly. The blaster Mikhail Pala, who was guarding the door, heard the voice outside the door and felt familiar. After thinking for a while, he remembered that it was the boss's voice. Boss, so after a while, Mikhail asked a little unbelievably. Yes, you are safe, because your boss is here, Luo Guang said. Although Mikhail heard what the boss said, he still opened the door very carefully. After confirming that the person outside the door was wearing a black cat sheriff mask, he put away the pistol hidden behind the door. Boss, you are finally here. Is the mission over? Where are the others? Seeing the living people, Mikhail became very excited. He looked around, but did not see anyone from other teams. Hearing Mikhail's words, Kalas and the man with the crew cut who were resting behind him immediately stood up and walked out of the room with Mikhail, welcoming the boss to come and save them. Okay, you guys are fine, I'm worried about your whole army being wiped out. As for the mission, I've already solved it on Morpheus's side, but there's no signal here, so I can't contact you, so I came here to find your team. Luo Guang said a few words of comfort. Gil followed Luo Guang and said, let's get back to the ground quickly. We still need to confirm the situation over there in the missile well. Ah, by the way, after hearing Gil's words, Corliss took out a piece of paper and said, this is the map of the waste treatment facility found in the room. Boss, look, from here, we can directly from the waste disposal facility to the missile well. Then why have you been squatting here and not going to the missile well? Luo Guang was curious as to why they stopped moving here. Kalas was a little embarrassed when he heard Luo Guang's words. He was so high-spirited before the beginning, but now he was squatting and hiding in a room. He felt ashamed. Luo Guang noticed that Corliss seemed to have changed a lot compared with the rooster who had always held his head high. Kalas now became very humble. Could it be that things must be reversed when they reach their extremes? His own hints made Corliss become more arrogant, but after the blow from the Atlantic Institute mission, Corliss directly became a humble person. We waste too many bullets. If we continue to move forward, in the end we will have to use daggers to deal with those biological and chemical weapons and mercenaries. While Luo Guang was thinking, Corliss did not hide anything and told the truth about his team's situation. As the captain of the Koken team, Corliss also reflected on his series of actions after joining GIMZ in that room. I can only say that I have been doing so many annoying things, and my boss has not driven me away. The boss is really broad-minded. Although Corliss's temperament changed drastically, his willpower was not enough to break Luo Guang's hint. He immediately found advantages for Luo Guang in his heart, and at the same time made him even more unhappy with Kenya, his superior in the X organization. Let you have a good lesson. You brought so much ammunition, and I didn't see how many enemies you killed all the way here. Luo Guang hated the fact that iron cannot become steel, and said, you don't use daggers to kill some of the zombies in the Atlantic Research Institute that can be killed with daggers. You only use firearms throughout the whole battle, and there will definitely not be enough bullets. The three members of Koken's team lowered their heads and expressed their guilt. They didn't plan carefully in the early stage, were chased all the way in the midterm, and only thought about the bullet issue when they were safe in the later stage. This simple sentence summed up the situation of Koken's team along the way. I won't say much about education. You should reflect on it after you go back. Before the three of them could answer, Luo Guang turned to Gil and asked, Black Cat, how many bullets do you have over there? Gil uses an M4A1 assault rifle, so he can give some bullets to Corliss and Mikhail. 4.5 magazines, and a dozen loose bullets. Gil always knew the situation of his ammunition preparation, and immediately answered Luo Guang's question. After hearing Gil's words, the three of Corliss really wanted to find a crack to get in. The remaining bullets of one person on the other side were as much as the main weapon reserves of the three of them combined. The most important thing is that when Corliss heard that his boss wanted the Black Cat elements to give him ammunition, he quickly explained his mistake and said, "I won't use it, I lost all the magazines for my AUG on the road." Luo Guan cursed in his heart, what a loser, and after thinking for a moment, he said, "Corliss, you take out the rifle bullets and give it to Mikhail, and then Mikhail, you only keep a spare pistol magazine, and the other pistol bullets all to Corliss. In this way, both sides will have a relatively sufficient number of bullets to use, and no one will be short of firepower during the operation. Unless facing relatively strong biochemical weapons such as Tyrant, 9mm pistol bullets are enough for ordinary zombies and humans." Corliss instantly understood the reason for Luo Guang's arrangement. He pressed the unloading button and unloaded the magazine of his AUG assault rifle. "Go into the room and do these." There was a safe house, so there was no need for them to stand at the door and do this. Luo Guang frowned, wondering whether Corliss was a powerful killer. That's right," Corliss knew that he was impatient, so he responded quickly and returned to the room with the others. After rearranging his equipment, Luo Guang distributed some chocolates and bottled water to Koken's team and started on the road again. On the other side, the Wolf team and the Echo team were fighting in the missile well. Based on a prisoner captured by Victor, the two teams confirmed the location of the missile launch command center. "Boss, I haven't been able to contact the boss. Is he running away or having an accident?" A mercenary at the missile launch center was panting and reporting to his boss. These mercenaries are all from Asan. They speak with an accent that smells like curry, and they sound inexplicably happy. "They all told me to call me captain," the mercenary boss yelled, and then said, "although the boss won't let us follow him to protect him. I think the enemies are divided into two groups, and the boss is in danger. Then what are we going to do? We haven't received the final payment yet." The younger brother's panic made the mercenary boss inexplicably irritated, and he cursed angrily, "Is it still a matter of money now? We are all in danger." When the missile silo was built, not many monitoring devices were installed. The mercenary boss was not aware of what was happening in most places, but judging from the radio communication within the team, the rubbish under his command should not be able to stop the enemy. "Then let's surrender," the younger brother immediately said the words of surrender. The missile launch center became silent in an instant, and the mercenaries, including the boss, looked at the younger brother. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. As mentioned before, the people following Morpheus include mercenaries and some former Umbrella researchers. These mercenaries are composed of two parts. One part is the cheap mercenaries that Morpheus found in India, and the other part is the elite mercenaries arranged for Morpheus by the sponsors behind Morpheus. Although those elite mercenaries have great business capabilities, in order to get rid of the control of those sponsors, Morpheus directly buried these mercenaries who may have tasks such as monitoring himself and seizing the T/G fusion virus in the shower. So the mercenaries defending the missile silo are naturally those cheap Indian mercenaries. These Indian mercenaries have little loyalty to Morpheus, and Morpheus will not trust them either. Although Morpheus seems to value them very much and has given them the task of defending the missile silo, this missile launch command center also has a button that can launch missiles. But in fact, if you want to manually launch missiles here, you first need to enter a 13-digit password, then insert two keys, and twist the keys at the same time within 1 second, so that the missile launch program can be successfully started. Although there is a highly skilled hacker who can easily break the old computer program here, this kind of technical work is very rare among mercenaries, not to mention that the mercenaries under Morpheus are basically illiterate. And Morpheus has long been prepared for this situation. As long as the intelligence system developed by Umbrella Corporation he uses detects a hacker intrusion, it will immediately lock and shut down the entire launch system. As for why it is set to lock the launch system instead of directly detonating the missile, it is because Morpheus does not have the courage to die with the enemy. The mercenaries, including the mercenary boss, were completely unaware that Morpheus had threatened two major countries and asked them to give him $5 billion each. Otherwise, these mercenaries would not be easily dismissed by Morpheus's final payment of $500,000, and would definitely ask for an additional $100 million. The mercenary boss was angry when he heard the younger brother's words, but the rescue calls and screams coming from the headphones tortured his nerves all the time. "Dad, I'm just talking, we." Instead, the younger brother couldn't stand the depressing atmosphere at this time and wanted to take back what he had just said without thinking. But the mercenary boss raised his hand to stop the younger brother, turned off the communicator, and said seriously, "You are right, although $500,000 is a lot, it is too much of a loss to have money but no life. Now that the dead are all our temporary recruits, it is the kingly way to stop the loss." "Then boss." "No, then captain, how can we surrender? We don't have the other party's phone number." The younger brother saw the boss's cannibalistic eyes, and hurriedly changed his words to call the captain and raised his own questions. The mercenary boss immediately thought of a way, gently patted his younger brother's shoulder, and smiled at the other party. The younger brother looked puzzled, looked at his boss's smile, and gradually understood what the boss meant. A little cold sweat began to appear on his forehead, and he pulled out an ugly smile. "Thanks, Omega. Subscription, votes, and rewards." Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 209. Chapter 204. Remaining issues. Is the battle in the missile silo intense? Searched Can on Google. Naturally, it was very fierce. In the corridor where the two sides were fighting, the bullets of the mercenaries were flying everywhere along with their roars, but this was just a loud thunder and a small amount of rain. The fierce-looking mercenaries did not attack the wolves and the Echo team. Cause any casualties? The reason is not difficult to guess. Although the mercenaries were not good at marksmanship, they planned to use firepower to suppress them and shoot randomly based on the number of bullets to see if they could hit the enemy. But neither the wolf team nor the Echo team would risk their flesh and blood on whether the enemy's bullets would hit them, so everyone hid obediently behind the bunker. Seeing that the previously unstoppable enemy was being beaten by them, the mercenaries worked even harder, constantly replacing new magazines and holding down the trigger until the barrel of the gun turned red. The members of the Echo team are all people who have seen strong winds and waves. They are hiding behind the wall and waiting for the opportunity calmly. However, the wolf team does not want to wait. They are walking in another corridor at this time, planning to take advantage of the Echo team to attract the enemy. Sometimes, to surround those mercenaries who are careless about their heads, or launch a new offensive from another place. A red-eyed mercenary emptied another magazine and reached for the ammunition box next to him, but found nothing. Looking at the empty ammunition box, the mercenary turned around and yelled at his teammates to give him some bullets. His teammates were also playing crazy at this time, grinning, and didn't even hear their teammates calling him. "Hey! Where are you?" Before the mercenary could finish his words, he was interrupted by a grenade that appeared in front of him. The mercenary's last words were so simple and easy to understand. The grenade's explosion time was calculated very accurately. It exploded in mid-air before it hit the ground, knocking the mercenaries on both sides off their feet. The mercenaries used a lot of sandbags as bunkers, so one grenade may not be able to wipe out all the enemies. To be on the safe side, the Echo team threw another fragmentation grenade and 2 flash shock grenades, and then took turns to cover and launch the attack. The Echo team did not place their hopes on others, and took the initiative to attack, settling the battle before the wolves outflanked them. In a bit of a show-off mood, Echo squad leader Crisp told the wolves about the situation. The captain of the wolf team, the wolf mother, didn't react much when she heard the other party's showy words. The most important thing was that her wolf cubs didn't need to take risks. We encountered people who surrendered here. Wolf Mother Looper's words made Crisp put away her little show-off and correct her attitude. Surrender. They were sent by the boss of those mercenaries. You have to contact the God of Death or the boss to make a decision on this matter. Of course I know this. I have just sent the ninja to find the God of Death. Looper did everything right. It is better to send someone to explain this more important matter. When attacking, you need to advance steadily, but when returning, Ninja Victor starts racing mode and soon leaves the missile well and finds Hank. Huh? Where's the lone wolf? Victor asked casually when he saw that the lone wolf who had been following Hank was no longer there. The agents from the Lighthouse Country and the Eastern Country are coming to monitor our actions. I sent the lone wolf to pick up people. How are you doing? The progress is going pretty well. Only one person on the Echo team's arm was scratched by a stray bullet, but it's not serious. Hank was very satisfied with this and asked, "What's the matter with you coming back?" Seeing Victor coming alone, Hank naturally thought that something was wrong, and after hearing what Hank said, Victor immediately told Hank everything. Carlos, who was holding a machine gun on guard, couldn't help laughing when he heard the mercenary representative holding up a pair of white underwear and shouting surrender. What should we do? After Victor explained the matter clearly, he asked Hank's opinion. It is naturally best if the other party is willing to surrender instead of fighting for his life. It can prevent the other party from being overwhelmed and causing casualties to the GIMZ troops. Previously, it was because the fighting capabilities of the Echo team and the Wolves were stronger than Carlos's Angel team, so Hank gave Carlos the task of guarding the entrance. This arrangement made Hank feel more at ease. But when faced with surrender, a question often arises: do these enemies really surrender, or do they pretend to surrender? Russell. Hank was thinking about the code that came from the communicator. After matching the code, Crisp's voice came from the communicator. Death, we met the 6th team and the boss. The Wolf team was waiting in one place, waiting with the mercenary who raised his hand to surrender, so the team that met Luo Guang in the missile well was naturally the Echo team that was still moving forward to clean up the enemy. Although the Wolves said that some people surrendered, in the final analysis, they had not accepted the other party's surrender, and reducing the number of enemies would also help them control those who surrendered. The mercenary leader already knew that his younger brother had successfully connected with the opponent, and immediately recruited his cronies back, leaving only the red-eyed recruits to continue to block the enemy. Luo Guang gave the order to defend in place, then took Crisp's communicator and said, "Report the situation." Hank told Luo Guang everything about the time when Luo Guang lost contact with others. Well done. Luo Guang praised him and felt happy after hearing Hank's explanation. It seems that the biggest gain from this incident is not that my GIMZ can become famous again, but that it can connect with the governments of the Lighthouse Country and the Eastern Country. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Leaving aside the Lighthouse Country for the moment, the Eastern Country, which has not yet established an anti-biochemical force, can naturally become the next partner of the GIMZ force. Of course, Eastern countries will not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries, but they must prevent others from releasing biochemical viruses in their own countries and causing biochemical crises. Wolf Mother, communicate with those who surrendered and ask them to put down their weapons and get out of the missile silo. Based on the current situation, Luo Guang continued to issue orders. God of Death, you will arrange for the 3rd team to receive and control those who surrender. Receive. Receive. Hank and Looper responded one after another. Okay, now there are 2 tasks that need to be completed. The first is our original task, which is to deal with the virus missiles here, and the second task is to take those mercenaries out. The Echo team successfully reunited with the Wolves, and then Crisp was seen speaking to Looper. Wolf Mother Looper snorted and said, "We understand what you mean. You go and dismantle and clean up the virus missiles, and we just escort those people away." Crisp shook his head and replied, "You misunderstood, Wolf Mother. Although we have fought before because of our positions, we are on the same side now." In order to better complete the task, Crisp felt that the two parties should take this opportunity to reconcile, and this would be a matter of great benefit and harmlessness to both parties. The Wolf Mother was silent. She felt very surprised. From the perspective of the world, the wolf team belonging to Umbrella was a complete bad guy. Since ancient times, good and evil have not existed. She really did not expect that the Echo team, who played the role of the righteous side, would take the initiative to propose reconciliation. Hector behind him did the same, with his mouth wide open and looking at Crisp in disbelief. "We must act as a team. This is the only way for us to escape alive in a Resident Evil incident." This is what Crisp said to his teammates when he was in Raccoon City. At this time, Crisp said these words again, not only to express his own thoughts, but also to say it to his teammates in the Echo team behind him. After all, he did this temporarily and did not discuss it with his teammates. The teammates behind him had no objection to this, and Marissa, who was the least able to hide her emotions, did not express any objection. This made Crisp feel relieved and looked at the Wolf Mother with a bit of expectation. Wolf Mother Looper looked back at her teammates, and then stretched out her hand. Crisp smiled rarely and shook hands with the other party. The mercenary boy didn't know what was going on both sides, so he thought to himself, weren't the people on both sides the same group? He thought about all kinds of conspiracies and plots to drive a wedge between people on both sides, but the mercenary boy immediately recalled what his boss told him before he set off, and quickly covered his uncontrollable mouth with his hands holding white flags. And then a foul smell hit his nose, making him retching. Victor, who was responsible for looking after the mercenary boy, glanced at the retching opponent, remained silent, and took a small step away. "Let's go back to the previous topic," Crisp said. "I actually want us to mix the two sides and then divide them into two sides to perform tasks." Although they shook hands and made peace, trust between the two parties had not been fully established for a while, so Crisp was not anxious and planned to take things step by step. Looper understands the ways of the world very well. As soon as Crisp finished speaking, she understood the other party's intention and said, "On our side, Fatty and I will escort the prisoners together. Dr. Bertha and Ninja will follow you." Crisp looked at the configuration of the wolves and said, "Then our doctors Harley and Willow, Caroline, will follow you. Their positions are the same as those of Dr. Bertha and the others." The Wolf Mother nodded and directly agreed to the other party's plan without saying anything else. The mercenary boy saw that the two sides had negotiated, and then said tremblingly, "Since the two bosses have negotiated, should I ask my captain to put down his weapon and come over?" Crisp and Looper looked at the mercenary brother almost at the same time. After putting enough pressure on the other party, Looper said, "Don't be anxious, we still need your boss help with something." After that, things became very simple and fell into place. With the surrendered mercenary boss acting as internal support, the stubborn mercenaries were easily led into the death trap of the wolves and the Echo Squad. That guy actually abandoned his people after receiving the report from the wolves. Hank showed a rare look of disgust on his face. Carlos showed an angry look and said, "Do we really want to accept the surrender of this kind of people? Boss, please don't take over this group of mercenaries." Luo Guang replied, "It's okay. When people from the two countries come over later, I will leave this group of people to them to deal with." "That's good." Carlos looked relieved. Seeing that Carlos was still the same as before, Gil smiled silently. Unfortunately, he couldn't reveal Luo Guang's identity, so he couldn't give Carlos a surprise. On the other side, Bruce and Fang Ling also started a tour of the Atlantic Research Institute and the Missile Well, led by Lone Wolf and Chenzij Hen. When the two were on the shower, they thought they would become the protagonists in saving their country. As a result, after leaving the shower, the two of them became the audience, the kind of poor audience who were blocked by the pillars in front of the concert. The two of them didn't know that in the world before Luo Guang's time travel, they would be the protagonists of a game called Guns of Souls 4, and their relationship would quickly heat up in the process of you save me, I'll save you, finally came together. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. And this fate has changed dramatically because of Luo Guang's intervention. After walking around, Bruce and Fang Ling walked out of the cave at the entrance of the missile well and looked at the camp below. A dozen mercenaries were sitting cross-legged in the center of the camp, looking very well behaved. Oh! Carlos, who was controlling the machine gun, whistled when he saw Fang Ling. He had been staring at the rough guys below for too long and needed something eye-catching to protect his eyes. You guys are here. It just so happens that I have something to ask you for. Luo Guang still wore a mask on his face. Although Bruce couldn't see Luo Guang's solemn expression, they could still hear the solemnity in Luo Guang's words. What happened? Bruce asked immediately, not wanting to guess a riddle. Luo Guang sorted out the information he just heard from the mercenary boss and explained, the mercenary boss who surrendered just now told me something, which was arranged by Morpheus. After taking a breath, Luo Guang continued, there are two planes heading to important cities in the Lighthouse Country and the Eastern Country respectively, but the specific city names and the person who surrendered are not clear. You need to verify it yourself. Luo Guang continued, then Morpheus arranged for people to spread the virus on the plane. As long as the plane arrives at the airport and there is no alert at the airport, the passengers and crew who turn into zombies will cause a biochemical disaster at the airport. The worst is what happens is that people infected with the T-virus leave the airport and bring the virus into town. But if everyone on the plane is infected with the virus, how come? The captain of the plane is from Morpheus. Bruce figured it out quickly. Gil and others were shocked when they heard this information. However, they were on a small island in the Atlantic Ocean, and their transportation was a cargo ship. They did not have the domestic law enforcement rights of the lighthouse, so they were beyond their reach. The two countries could only rely on themselves to solve the problem. That's troublesome. Luo Guang had already informed Samus of the Red Claws about the information and asked her to prepare for battle. As for the Dongfang Kingdom, he had no channel to inform and could only tell Fang Ling about the situation. However, judging from the flight path, passengers heading to Eastern Country will land about an hour later than those heading to Lighthouse Country, so there is still plenty of time in Eastern Country. As for the reason why Morpheus did this kind of thing, he actually planned to use it to threaten Wang Jia used by the two countries to increase the intensity of his threat. If the two countries agree to his conditions, he will also tell the two countries which flights they are to express his sincerity, but Morpheus, who has gone to hell, has no chance to tell others the answer. Fang Ling and Bruce quickly reported the information to their superiors, but it was already too late for the Lighthouse Country. The fully loaded passenger plane has landed and the aero bridge has been connected. Meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 210. Chapter 205 Worsening, Part 1. Sir, why don't you let us go? Samus was holding the phone at this time, and said angrily to the other end of the phone. Calm down. The military leader knew that Samus was of this character, so he was not angry. After taking a few deep breaths, Samus asked the same question again. The military leader nodded in his heart. Samus did not lose his composure. He could tell the other party the next words, otherwise he was worried that Samus would come over and punch him. It was an order from the president. I'm listening. Samus did not ask for any orders, but her words were to express that she was waiting for the military leader to tell her the reason. The military leader knew that Samus was angry, slowed down his tone, and said, it is true that the biochemical crisis incident should be solved by you, or assisted in handling, but this time is different. What's the difference? Isn't it all for the protection of the citizens of the lighthouse country? Samus didn't think there was any difference. It's an international airport, and someone has successfully created a biochemical crisis there. If this gets out, it will hit our country's prestige, and recently Terra Sephir has been holding demonstrations at this airport. You know that group of people is very difficult to deal with. This airport demonstration is aimed at a senator named Ron Davis. This senator owns a lot of shares in Wilf Pharma Pharmaceuticals, and speaks for the pharmaceutical company in the news media, promoting Wilf Pharma Pharmaceuticals' latest T-virus vaccine, etc., and he is a bit outspoken, so Terra Sephir naturally targeted him. It is unclear whether there is any political enemy behind this, Senator Davis, who funded Terra Sephir. So the senator's itinerary was leaked, and naturally attracted Terra Sephir demonstrators. So the Red Claws, which have soldiers from various countries, can't go there, and the official still wants to conceal this matter. Although Samus was angry, her thinking became sharper. The military leader was silent for a while, did not answer Sam's question, and said, "Don't worry, the president will not let the biochemical disaster happen because of this." Which professional force took on this task? Leon S. Kennedy, the president's direct agent, who had studied in your special operations team before. Because it was impossible to confirm which flight the plane carrying the zombies was, by the time the military received the information, quickly launched the plan, and completely blocked the entire airport. The airport had already fallen. When the airport was wounded, the Harvardville police, who were closer, naturally rushed to the scene. Although they soon lost command, the police were not driven away by the military, and were assigned to perform the task of maintaining order outside the airport. Outside the airport, a large number of family members rushed to the scene, anxiously waiting for news of their relatives and friends. Clearing the zombies at the airport is urgent, but the problem is that the senator who is still alive needs to rescue this pot-bellied guy first. The reason was that the senator did not want to stay there, nor did he want the military to be accidentally injured during the cleanup mission, so he immediately mobilized his political power to put pressure on the military. The military blocked the airport at this time, and the rescue mission unexpectedly fell on the local SWAT of the Haverhill Police Department. The reason is also very simple. There are obvious differences in the training content of military soldiers and SWAT. In terms of the skills of rescuing hostages, the SWAT is obviously better. This airport belongs to the jurisdiction of Haverhill, and the SWAT in this city is not called SWAT, but SRT, Special Response Team. The Special Response Team of the Haverhill Police Department is the counterpart of the SWAT team of the Los Angeles Police Department, which is mainly responsible for rescuing lives. In the camp outside the blockade, in the tent of the SRT team, several team members are very seriously maintaining their weapons and are ready to perform tasks at any time. Why hasn't the agent sent from above come yet? Doesn't he know that time is very tight? The person who spoke was named Greg Glenn, 28 years old, one of the members of the SRT team, who was complaining. He was not used to waiting for people. Angela Miller, the captain of the SRT team, was born and raised in Haverhill City and was proud of being able to protect local security. After hearing Greg's words, she explained to the agent she had never met before. The agent was arranged by the president to help the military solve the problem. It naturally takes a lot of time to come here from Washington. But it's too slow. Maybe because he came late, we set off late. What if we couldn't save the people we could have saved? Don't say these words when you meet Angela's personality is gentler than others, and she kindly reminded. I know, Greg said with a look of indignation. Angela didn't know if Greg had listened to her, so she continued, I'll go talk to the higher UPS to see if we can move ahead. Greg nodded silently, and his captain finally took the initiative to fight for it. Angela put away her pistol, stood up and was about to leave the tent. As soon as she reached the door, she saw someone lifting the curtain to come in. Angela hurriedly stepped back, but fortunately she didn't bump into anyone's chest. Sorry. When Leon saw the other party's actions, he knew that he came in without saying hello and almost bumped into someone. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. It's okay. Who are you? Angela stood firm and looked at the other person's clothes, which were no different from ordinary people. She couldn't tell for a moment. You are not the agent sent from above, are you? There were not many people walking in this place wearing private clothes, and Greg quickly put forward his guess. Leon nodded and replied, yes, this is the SRT team's tent, right? Greg looked down on Leon and pointed to his epaulette. Compared to Greg, Angela was much more polite and said, yes, I am the Captain Angela Miller, and the person who just spoke is Greg Glenn. The mission is time sensitive. If you don't come, we will. The application took off on its own. Although polite, Greg's previous complaints were valid, so Angela implicitly expressed her dissatisfaction with Leon's tardiness. Leon scratched his head in embarrassment and said, okay, but we need to discuss it first. Do you have a map of the airport? Angela led Leon to the table, and the 3-story airport structure diagram was placed on the table. On the way here, Leon had already read the introduction to the mission and related information, and said, the only survivors that can be confirmed now are the senator and his party. According to them, a total of 4 of them survived, including a little girl, and the only armed bodyguard had died, so they were all unarmed. We know this information ourselves, and we have memorized it by heart. By the time we wait for you. Greg crossed his arms on his chest and said. Leon did not reply and continued, according to the map, the fastest route is for us to take a helicopter directly to the rooftop above the east area of the airport, then go down 1 level, and then go to the VIP lounge of Atmospheric Airlines where the survivors are. Angela and others agreed with Lion's route, and then Angela began to call her team members to start working. The number of people in this mission should not be too large. It is best to be able to keep quiet throughout the entire process. And I don't want to risk increasing the number of infections. You don't want to be forced to shoot your friends, right? Leon stopped everyone who was getting ready, pointed at Angela and Greg, and said, it's enough for you and him to act together with me, and the others will be responsible for taking over. I have indeed heard that zombies are very sensitive to sound. If there are many people, it is easier to attract a large number of zombies. Angela has been following the Raccoon City incident because of her brother, so she knows some rumors about zombies. Leon nodded, agreeing with Angela's statement. Greg expressed a different idea about this and said, hey. You can't be serious, are you? There are so many of us holding weapons directly, and the gods are blocking the gods and the ghosts are killing the ghosts along the way. Isn't this okay? Already. Greg patted the MP5 submachine gun in his hand, and continued what he said before, the demons and monsters all broke out. Angela, do you have a more stable member of your team? He is not suitable for this rescue mission. Since the other party said before that time was urgent, Leon did not mince words. What? Greg was so stimulated that he sprayed saliva on Leon's face, slapped the table and glared at Leon. After being trained on various missions and taught by Clausa, Leon is no longer the rookie he was before. All he lacks is more combat experience. So Leon did not argue with the other party, but said to Angela, look, he is too impulsive and irritable, and I think he thinks I am young and looks down on me. Greg didn't deny it. Angela also did not defend her teammates, because although Angela was also the captain, Greg felt that Angela was young and too soft and not suitable to be the captain. In fact, Angela, who is relatively young in terms of qualifications and age, should not have become the leader of the SRT team so early. The problem was with the previous captain. The previous captain was known for his tough guy style, excellent work style, and uprightness. He would use thunderous means to quickly solve criminals when faced with them. Because of the presence of this captain, the city of Haverville has always had a low rate of serious crime incidents. But during a certain hostage rescue mission, the former captain eliminated the criminals and the hostages together during the raid. Although the former captain was not later held criminally responsible for the hostage's death, he was fired from the Haverville Police Department. As for the next captain, the police chief chose Angela, who has a gentler style, in order to avoid the recurrence of hostage deaths. In the end, Greg sat back. He was so powerful that even if Greg complained or used provocation, he could not change Leon's decision. After Angela reselected a more stable SRT team member, the three of them got on the helicopter and flew to the roof of the east area of the airport. Do you have any experience in facing biological crises? No. Angela and another SRT team member, Jonathan McCann, shook their heads. We don't have much time, so let me briefly explain what you need to pay attention to. Leon lowered his head to check the weapon in his hand and said, zombies have very good hearing and will attack any living person without exception. Any wound caused will lead to infection, turning living people into zombies, so you can't hesitate when facing zombies, and use the weapons in your hands to give them a fatal blow. This is the lesson Marvin told Leon when he was in the Raccoon City Police Department. Before Marvin and Leon parted ways, Marvin specifically told Leon about his experience and lessons. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. With a click, the pistol bullet was loaded. Leon raised his head and said, only by destroying the zombie's head can the zombie's action be stopped. In simple terms, it is a headshot. Angela and Jonathan nodded seriously. Due to their profession, they are more accustomed to and good at attacking the enemy's body or limbs, so they have to change this habit for this mission. Because it is very close to the east area of the airport, the helicopter arrived at the destination with just a few simple words. Leon took the lead and got off the helicopter by rope descent. He walked to the rooftop door with an MP5 submachine gun in his hand. Leon commanded the two to be on guard behind the door, one on the left and one on the right, and then he stood in front of the door and prepared to open the door to enter. The door was not locked. Leon gently pushed the door open, raised the submachine gun and flashed in. He confirmed the safety of the stairs and immediately aimed at the position behind the door. In the training ground of the Red Claws, the response to the door opening is the top priority. It is worth mentioning that, Leon and Krauser worked together and successfully passed the scenario training. Leon used the standard military hand gestures of the Lighthouse Nation to tell the SRT team that two people could follow him. There was no light on the stairs, so the three of them turned on the tactical flashlights hanging under the submachine guns and carefully moved downstairs. Perhaps because there were not many living people in the airport and the survivors had already hidden, the corridor was very quiet. Only a few zombies were attracted by the sound of the helicopter and moved towards Leon and the other two. Angela saw the swaying person in front of her, moved the flashlight over, and immediately saw that the zombie's stomach was open and the intestines were all over the floor. Startled, Angela took a small step back. Leon did not shoot, so although Angela and Jonathan were very nervous and a little scared, they still resisted the urge to shoot and break the silence. Leon was very satisfied with this, raised his left hand, and made a gesture to cover himself. Then Leon raised the gun with one hand, took out the dagger given to him by Krauser with the other hand, and moved forward carefully. Seeing Leon being so careful and taking out the dagger to deal with the hideous zombie face to face, the two seemed to be infected by this atmosphere, moved their fingers, and swallowed their saliva. Leon was also familiar with this, and there was no accident. He held the dagger in an ice cone style, stabbed the zombie's head from the temple with a backhand, and then held the zombie with his foot, so that the zombie that was solved slid down the wall and fell on the precious carpet on the ground, minimizing the zombie's fall to the ground. The volume of the sound. Let Angela and the other two approach him, and Leon was responsible for clearing the way and walked through most of the corridor. There was a wall on one side of the corridor, and various offices and other rooms on the other side. Leon walked along the wall. He noticed that there was a large group of zombies behind the floor-to-ceiling glass on the office side, so he gestured to let the two pay attention to the enemies on the left, and continued to lead the team forward. Seeing that Leon had no intention of solving the enemies in the office, the two members of the SRT team followed Leon with doubts, without asking questions at the beginning. Without any danger, the two walked through this corridor and continued to move towards the VIP room. Suddenly, Leon heard the sound of running, and immediately issued an order to stay on guard. Meow, it's a magical change as usual. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 211. Chapter 206 Deterioration, Part 2. Help! Turning the corner, Leon and the other two saw a man in a suit and round glasses running towards them, followed by two zombies. Get down! Angela was eager to save people, and ignored Jing's previous order, shouting and shooting. The man in the suit had not learned how to crawl quickly, so it was better to say that he fell down than to lie down. Leon did not stop him at this time, otherwise the zombies would not be solved by then, and the man in the suit could not run away, and the gun still fired. Angela still remembered the precautions that Leon had told her, and directly fired two 3-shot bursts to solve the two zombies. Are you here to save us? The man in the suit was still in shock, and asked like grabbing a life-saving straw. Who are you? Leon did not relax his vigilance, and asked after confirming that the other party did not have a fever and his body movements were not abnormal. I'm the secretary of Senator Ron Davis. The man in the suit didn't say his own name, but said Ron Davis' name, as if the identity of the senator's secretary could save his life. We are on the way to rescue the senator now, you follow us, don't make any noise. Angela told the senator's secretary some precautions. On the other side, SRT team member Jonathan was guarding the back road. He heard and saw the group of zombies in the office before directly broke through the floor-to-ceiling glass, and then followed the sound to the direction of Leon and his team. So Jonathan immediately patted Leon on the shoulder, and then reported that it was not advisable to stay here for a long time. Leon nodded and immediately directed everyone to follow him to move forward. Where are you going? I can show you the way. The secretary was very servile. In order to show his value, he immediately offered to show the way for the three people. No, you just keep quiet. Angela said this, which was easier for the secretary to accept than the handsome Leon. Continuing to move forward, the straight line distance from the VIP room where the senator and his team were was less than 50 meters. Again. The sound of running was heard again, and Leon appeared from the corner with a gun in hand. Squat down. The person being chased by the zombies squatted down immediately, and because Angela had shot before, Leon did not use a dagger to fight the zombies in close combat, and chose to speed up the advancement and shoot to solve the problem. Unlike Angela, Leon used the burst mode to control the effect of the single-shot mode, and accurately solved the three zombies behind the opponent with 3 shots. Are you okay? Leon stretched out his hand to the person who squatted down immediately. Leon, Claire was very surprised to see Leon, and stretched out her hand to put on Leon's hand and stood up. Leon was also surprised to see Claire. He did not expect Claire to appear here. Claire? Where's Steve? When he saw Claire before, Steve was following Claire, so Leon asked this question. And I'm working at Terra Sever now. I came to the airport today to pick up a friend. Steve is not used to the work at Terra Sever, so he went to find Chris. He wants to join BSS. Claire briefly explained her situation. We are here for rescue. Leon told Claire his purpose. Claire nodded, indicating that she had guessed it, because it was she who made the rescue call. The group soon arrived at the VIP lounge. Why are you so slow to come? When Senator Ron Davis heard the gunshots before, he boasted to Claire that the rescue came so quickly because of him, but now he changed his words and showed off his official power. Just a few people? Are there other rescuers outside? Without waiting for Angela to explain with her mouth slightly open, Davis looked behind Leon and asked. We are all the rescuers. Where are the reinforcements? There are no reinforcements, so we have to go out on our own, Leon said in a business-like manner. When he was in agent training, he had already learned how to deal with those politicians, so Leon was used to Davis' bureaucratic face and did not express disgust. Unlike Davis's expectation that there would be hundreds of people to rescue him, Davis was angry. After Claire entered the VIP lounge, a little girl ran over and hugged Claire. The girl's name was Lonnie Keela. Her family died in the T-virus vaccine clinical trial conducted by Wilf Pharma Pharmaceuticals in India. Now she is adopted by her aunt who lives in the Lighthouse country. However, because her aunt participated in the airport demonstration, the little girl who came with her aunt was involved in the biochemical incident that occurred at the airport. Claire, can we leave here? She whispered to Claire, frightened by the zombies. This poor girl reminded Claire of Shirley, who was under house arrest in the medical center because the virus in her body could not be removed. So Claire picked up the girl and comforted her softly, yes, we will be able to leave soon. Next, are we going to leave by helicopter? Hearing the topic of leaving, Senator Davis came over shamelessly. No, we will leave directly from the main door of the terminal, Leon replied. What? Davis' voice suddenly rose several degrees, and he shouted, are you sick? The terminal is full of zombies. Davis tried his best to escape from the terminal to this VIP lounge. When we come over, the sound of the helicopter will attract the zombies. Besides, because of the previous shooting, the way we came over has been blocked by a group of zombies. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. So now we go through the main entrance instead. There will be fewer zombies. Claire has cooperated with Leon and understands the reason why Leon chose the entrance to the terminal to leave. Leon nodded, and then continued, the terrain of the waiting hall is relatively wide. If we encounter faster biochemical monsters such as hunters, we will have space to deal with the enemy. He's right, and the zombies in this incident move slowly. As long as we keep moving and don't get surrounded, we can easily rush out, Claire agreed. Davis couldn't refute what the rescue captain Leon said, so he turned to Claire aggressively and said, oh? When did a member of an NGO organization know all about how to deal with biological crises? NGO is the abbreviation of non-governmental organization. She is one of the rare survivors of Raccoon City, and she has more to say about this nightmare than most people here. Leon's words were enough for others to understand that Claire was indeed qualified to participate in the topic of how to deal with the current situation. Raccoon City? Isn't that the one that was destroyed? Jonathan whispered behind Angela. Angela nodded and thought to herself, since the young girl named Claire is a Raccoon City survivor, will Leon, who knows him, also be a Raccoon City survivor? When Davis heard this, he couldn't say anything to refute and cursed in a low voice. What is the hunter? Seeing Davis pause temporarily, Angela raised her hand and asked. Leon ignored Davis's curse and instead answered Angela's question, it is a biochemical monster whose limbs are used to move. Its tongue can pierce body armor, and it is agile and can move on walls and ceilings. Climb up. Remember, their weak point is still their heads. When facing these enemies, it is best to turn on the burst mode of your submachine gun, Leon reminded the SRT team members and also told others. After explaining the next plan, Leon began to arrange the personnel and said, Jonathan, Angela, you protect the civilians as they move forward, and pay attention to the enemies coming from the left and right. Copy that, the SRT replied. Claire, this is for you. Leon walked up to Claire, handed his spare G19 pistol to Claire, and said, protect the child. Lonnie, who looked frightened, also reminded Leon of Shirley, thinking that she would visit Shirley after this mission. I'll give it back to you when I get out. Although Claire was just a civilian, Leon was right, she still needed to protect Lonnie, so she didn't show any pretense and directly took the gun, checked it and put it in the pocket of her jeans. Upon seeing this, Davis also shouted to give him a pistol for self-defense. Angela looked at Leon and heard Leon say, "Sorry, sir, we are not hunting. I don't want to be hit by one of my own bullets." After saying that, Leon turned around and started to leave, shutting up Davis, who still wanted to use official coercion to force the other party to give him weapons. Davis didn't know how to shoot, he just saw that others did, but he didn't, so he felt unbalanced. The group of people acted quickly. Leon had already memorized the terrain structure of the airport when he came to perform the mission, so he quickly led everyone to the terminal hall, less than 100 meters away from the exit. Although some zombies have been attracted to the East District, the number of zombies in the airport lobby at this time cannot be underestimated. "Are we really going to rush through here?" Davis said quietly after watching Leon finish communicating with the troops who were blocking the airport. It wasn't that Davis didn't want to snatch Leon's communicator, or shout loudly to let the people on the other side of the communicator know his existence and requirements, but the zombies with sensitive hearing made Davis, who cherished his life, dare not make any noise. Although the zombies mainly rely on hearing to hunt, this does not mean that the zombies are blind, so even if Leon and the others remained quiet, the zombies still discovered their existence and gradually surrounded them. "Speed up, don't stop, I'll open the way." Leon made a prompt decision, killing the two zombies blocking the road in front of him with 2 clicks, speeding up the pace of movement, and entering the final sprint stage. Davis tripped over the luggage on the ground and fell into a doggy position. Davis's female secretary immediately stepped forward to help Davis up. Davis used the strength to stand up. After taking a few steps, he realized that he had just injured his waist. Although Davis could still move, he could only hold his waist and endure the pain and walk, unable to run. Damn it! Davis looked at the main entrance getting closer and closer, as well as the zombies approaching on both sides, as if the road to life was getting narrower. The strong desire to survive caused Davis to burst out with strength and speed that were not suitable for his size. He directly ignored what Leon had told him before, dropped the female secretary, and rushed towards the door of the departure hall. Lonnie, who was walking in front, was knocked to the ground by Davis. Claire immediately helped the other person up and said, "Are you okay?" Lonnie stood up very strongly, smiled and said to Claire, who was worried about herself, "I'm fine." "Claire, be careful!" A zombie hiding under the bench crawled out from the bottom of the bench and reached out to crawl toward Claire and the other two. Lornie was very scared and screamed. She hugged Claire tightly and didn't move. This made Claire unable to evade, so Claire took a quick decision and took out her pistol. The muzzle of the gun was almost on the zombie's head. Claire killed the zombie with one shot. "Hold me tight," just like in Raccoon City, Claire held Lornie in her left hand, held a weapon in her right hand, and rushed out of the terminal hall with Leon and others. As soon as they left the airport building, the army immediately came up and took the survivors for a detailed physical examination to ensure that there were no infected people. Leon said to the leader, "Next, it's your turn." The leader of the army nodded and immediately gave an order. The army, which had been prepared for a long time, immediately launched a cleanup operation at the airport. After everyone finished the physical examination, Leon, Claire, Lornie, and Angela walked together in the camp. They couldn't leave for the time being. "Lornie," a middle-aged female voice came from outside the iron fence. It was Lornie's aunt. When Lonnie heard her aunt's voice, she looked over, then let go of Claire's hand and ran to her aunt's position, but was immediately stopped by a medical staff in isolation suit. The aunt on the other side was also stopped by the police to prevent the two from having any contact. "I can't stand noisy children," Davis, wrapped in a blanket and holding a cup of hot cocoa, said to the man in a beige suit next to him. "That's Davis over there," Claire heard Davis' voice, turned around and saw Davis making sarcastic remarks, and couldn't help but recall what happened in the terminal hall just now. Claire was furious and walked over directly and slapped Davis, confusing Davis and the man next to him. "Asshole. It's because of you that an 8-year-old child may have to spend the rest of his life under the shadow of this disaster," Claire scolded Davis. After that, Claire ignored Davis and walked directly to Lonnie, comforting Lonnie, who was crying when she saw her relatives. "Are you Donnie?" Leon looked at the man in a beige suit next to Davis. Chris and his friends had asked Leon to help investigate and collect information about Tang Ning, so Leon had an impression of the man in front of him. "You know me?" Tang Ning looked a little surprised, but she was more flustered. Because Leon was a spy from the Lighthouse country, and it was not a good thing for an agent to know you. Leon did not respond. He turned his head and looked at the convoy of trucks that were coming in. Claire on the other side also noticed the situation, and took Lonnie to find Leon and said, "Those are trucks from Will Pharma. What are they doing here?" Tang Ning stood up, smiling, as if introducing her proud product, and said, "These are the latest virus vaccines developed by my Will Pharma pharmaceutical company. Meow, I learned another writing trick today. Evolution begins with Resident Evil." Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 212. Chapter 207 Conversation. He is the chief researcher of Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals. He developed the vaccine against the virus, especially the virus you are so familiar with. It was obviously not Davis who developed the vaccine, but his tone was smug and annoying. "But our country already has a reliable vaccine in mass production. How could this mission use the vaccine you developed through human experiments?" Claire didn't believe it and asked doubtfully, "Could it be you who caused this crisis?" "Don't talk nonsense without evidence, little sister." Davis, who was over 50 years old, was naturally qualified to call Claire little sister, but when Claire heard Davis call her that, she showed a disgusted expression on her face. "Claire." Leon still knew the truth about the airport incident. He stopped Claire, who was getting more and more excited, and said, "Although I don't know if there is a mastermind behind the incident, according to the current intelligence, this incident was led by a former Umbrella researcher, and this researcher did not join other pharmaceutical companies." When saying this, Leon emphasized the word mastermind and looked at Tang Ning at the same time. The meaning was self-evident. Tang Ning understood and smiled, but didn't respond, looking like he was guessing. Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals was indeed one of the sponsors of Murphy's, but Tang Ning didn't know whether the company had pushed for the airport incident. Because in Tang Ning's eyes, this kind of thing was too risky, and the benefits were not enough to make him excited. Claire heard the hidden meaning in Lyon's words, but didn't continue to say that the other party was the mastermind, so as not to be caught and prosecuted. "It's still the same question. Your vaccine was actually approved by the Congress," Leon brought the topic back. Davis laughed and said, "What's the difficulty? You can't put all your hopes in one basket. In fact, the Congress didn't want the big cake of biochemical virus vaccine to be monopolized by the anti-umbrella corporation Research Institute under the Lighthouse National Military, so it approved this matter." "Thank you for your help," Senator Tang Ning complimented Davis. This help was actually Davis using a large amount of money from Will Pharma to lobby various senators. However, Tang Ning was good at hiding his dark side. After the incident on Benoi Island, Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals learned its lesson and no longer let the company be openly involved in biological and chemical incidents. The two sides were like-minded, but for Tang Ning, Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals was just one of his platforms to make money. In his opinion, although he was appointed as the chief researcher by the company, he felt that he and the company were in an equal partnership. He did not have any reservations about Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals. At least Tang Ning did not give the G virus sample he brought from Raccoon City to the company for development and research. Leon watched the two people in front of him flattering each other, his expression did not change at all. Claire, on the other hand, said to Davis, "But that company used those innocent people in India to conduct experiments, and only then did they come up with this vaccine." Davis looked disdainful and said, "It has nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with the Lighthouse country." Tang Ning on the other side said directly, "This is just your one-sided statement. Your NGO has not found even a single witness or the slightest evidence. The test subjects who were captured for human experiments wanted to escape or get rid of it, and there was only one way to die, so far no witness has survived. In addition, Will Pharma Pharmaceuticals has a strong influence in India. It has established its own corporate army and intelligence system like Umbrella Corporation, and has cleaned up all the evidence." Claire was speechless, and it would only be incompetent and furious if she continued to speak. "Ha ha," Davis said to Tang Ning with a smile as if he had won a battle, "let's go and take a look at those vaccines." Watching Davis and Tang Ning walk away while chatting and laughing, Claire did not follow them. She just lowered her head silently and clenched her fists. Claire. Leon did not know how to comfort Claire for a moment. It was about the cruelty of human experiments, and he could not use light words to ease the current atmosphere. "Leon." Claire still lowered her head and said slowly, "Do me a favor." The Atlantic Research Institute had been blocked by the joint investigation team of the two countries that arrived overnight, and the people of the GIMZ unit returned to the cargo ship after being checked by the investigation team for not carrying virus samples and other things. With the joint inspection of the two countries' inspectors, it should be able to ensure that the inspection was not lax. No one in his unit secretly hid the biochemical virus samples, so Luo Guang nodded in his heart, and this group of people passed the test. However, the GIMZ unit did not leave directly. The GIMZ unit that had just completed the mission needed to rest for a while, and Luo Guang was also waiting for someone to find him. 4 hours after the airport incident, Luo Guang was sitting in the captain's cabin of the cargo ship bought by GIMZ. At this time, in addition to Luo Guang, there was another person in the captain's cabin, Fang Ling. Fang Ling did not take this opportunity to return to her team, but secretly came to Luo Guang's ship. As Luo Guang expected, Fang Ling came to discuss important matters. To be precise, Fang Ling's superior had something to discuss with him. Fang Ling's communicator was placed on Luo Guang's desk at this time, and a very magnetic male voice came from the communicator. "This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Please take care of my brother's two sons." The person who talked to Luo Guang was a man named Lieutenant General Li, Fang Ling's superior. The two sons refer to Chen Zilong and Chen Zijhen, whose parents both died in a secret mission. As a good friend of the Chen brothers' father, Lieutenant General Li took over the custody of the two brothers and raised them to adulthood. It is not known whether it was influenced by Lieutenant General Li's ears and eyes, or the professional tradition of their Chen family since ancient times. The Chen brothers finally joined the army without hesitation. However, there is one thing that Lieutenant General Li did not know: the Chen brothers also had a goal of finding the murderer and avenging their parents in their hearts. "You're welcome. I just didn't expect that they were actually your intelligence agents. I thought it was a joke." During the interview, the Chen brothers told Luo Guang that they came in to collect biohazard intelligence and learn antibiochemical techniques, so Luo Guang felt that they didn't have the kind of mystery of ordinary intelligence agents. Lieutenant General Li heard Luo Guang's words and smiled bitterly. "They are too upright and not good at lying. In fact, they are not talents to be intelligence agents." But the Chen brothers insisted on joining the organization commanded by Lieutenant General Li, which made Lieutenant General Li very distressed about how to arrange their work. After telling Luo Guang about his difficulties, Lieutenant General Li smiled bitterly and said, "So sending them here is actually to let them hit a wall once, so that they don't always think that I am overprotecting them by not letting them go on missions. I didn't expect them to succeed." Luo Guang knew that he had ruined Li's painstaking efforts. Lieutenant General Li replied, "Yes, Fortunately they still remembered the confidentiality regulations and did not tell the confidential matters. Otherwise, they would not be honest, but stupid. But I was surprised that you would believe the words of two people without any evidence. After receiving the news and process of Chen Zijian's successful joining GIMZ, Lieutenant General Li's first reaction was that he had heard it wrong, and his second reaction was that the boss of GIMZ actually let the two join without verification. Could it be that the boss of GIMZ had known about the Chen brothers for a long time? In addition, Luo Guang sent Chen Zijian and Lone Wolf to follow Bruce and Fang Ling for a visit, which made Lieutenant General Li feel that Luo Guang knew that the Chen brothers and Fang Ling belonged to the same organization. So Lieutenant General Li's answer was also a test to see if he could get an accurate answer from the other party. Because it doesn't matter. What we GIMZ do is not a bad thing. It is open and above board. As long as they really want to oppose biochemicals, I don't care whether they are intelligence personnel or not. Luo Guang said this righteously. Boss Wu is thoughtful, but there are not many people in the world who are as righteous as you, Lieutenant General Li praised. Lieutenant General, there is no need to flatter me. I have my own reasons for opposing biochemicals, not all for justice and world peace. But Boss Wu, you are indeed doing good things. In the current international environment, there is a great lack of anti-biochemical forces. Lieutenant General Li was still laying the groundwork for his purpose of asking Fang Ling to contact Luo Guang. Official Red Claws, unofficial Terra Cipher, neutral GIMZ forces. In addition to these, there are many people with lofty ideals who are preparing some new forces, such as the former STARS in Raccoon City, who are preparing to establish a new force recently. Luo Guang gave a little GG for Jill and the others, saying, and unlike our mercenaries, they are more like conscripts. Lieutenant General Li wrote down Luo Guang's words. A force that was being prepared to be established was the best time for them to invest in shares. However, Boss Wu, you are too modest when you say that you are mercenaries. Didn't you carry out the cleanup of the Atlantic Institute on your own initiative? Lieutenant General Li had a good impression of the GIMZ troops, so he had this doubt. Luo Guang couldn't say that he was stealing the T/G fusion virus from the Paris Institute for Morpheus, so he didn't answer immediately, and Fang Ling saw all this. If there is something unspeakable, Boss Wu, don't force it. Lieutenant General Li's words sounded like Luo Guang had some conspiracy. Luo Guang shook his head and said slowly, rather than saying it's unspeakable, it's better to say that there is one thing I can't be sure of. What is it? Lieutenant General Li was very respectful and asked along with Luo Guang's words. Ada Wang, is she from your organization? Lieutenant General Li didn't expect to hear this name from Luo Guang, and this time Lieutenant General Li fell silent. After considering all aspects, Lieutenant General Li felt that he should maintain a good relationship with the GIMZ troops and said, we don't know what her original name is, but she was trained in our troops and then defected with important intelligence. Hearing the Lieutenant Colonel's words, Fang Ling clenched her fists. She was still a rookie at the time and failed to stop the escaped Ada Wang. Is this information very important? It was very important. The matter was directly exposed at the time, so we took measures immediately. By the time the information reached the enemy, it was out of date. Lieutenant General Li said it very easily, as if everything was under control, but the situation at that time could be said to be extremely urgent. Luo Guang did not pursue the question, but Lieutenant General Li continued, later, we also pursued it secretly, but she was really good at hiding. In the past year or so, she has changed her name and has always remained Ada Wang. Only by name can we get a little trace of each other. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Does she belong to any organization? Or is she alone? Lieutenant General Li thought for a while and said, we don't know whether the name of the organization is true. It is said that the name is Apocalypse. Apocalypse. Luo Guang's tone was filled with doubts, but he was very surprised in his heart. Lieutenant General Li replied, "That organization is a very mysterious organization. We don't know most of the information. The only thing that can be confirmed is that the people in the organization have the same bloodline as us. It's in your territory, but you didn't get any useful information." Luo Guang lowered his head and thought. To be honest, he was also very curious about this Apocalypse organization. Although Wang Wei told him a lot about this organization, since Luo Guang knew that his memory had not been manipulated by researcher Greg, he became suspicious of Wang Wei's words. Therefore, Luo Guang did not tell Lieutenant General Li what he knew to avoid causing misjudgment by the other party. Let's get back to the topic. Lieutenant General Li didn't know how to explain it, so he could only say this. Luo Guang gave the other party face and did not ask further questions, saying, "Since she is not from your organization, that's fine. My intelligence agent brought me information about the other party, which mentioned the Atlantic Research Institute, so we took action. Does this do you any good?" Lieutenant General Li guessed that Wu Song accidentally caught Ada Wang and tortured him to extract a confession, so he confirmed whether he was a member of his organization, so he did not ask more questions, but just asked the previous question. Publicity and troop training. There are not many biohazard incidents now, but it will be hard to say in the future, so in order for the GIMZ troops to have a place in the anti-biohazard force in the future, we must make our own name, Luo Guang said. That's why you brought the battlefield recorder. Lieutenant General Li nodded. Although this approach will increase the cost, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. He can also learn from it. That's right. You are right about one thing. According to the speculation of our think tank, biohazard incidents will definitely become more frequent in the future. Especially after Morpheus launched a bioterrorist attack on the two countries, Luo Guang said the second half of Lieutenant General Li's words. Yes. If the Raccoon City incident opened the lock on Pandora's box, then what Morpheus did has opened the whole box. I can already foresee that biological and chemical attacks will gradually replace the common attacks now. Lieutenant General Li was very worried after learning about the think tank's speculation. If a biological crisis broke out, the consequences would be disastrous. Luo Guang agreed with the think tank's speculation and understood Lieutenant General Li's concerns, waiting for the other party's next words. So, we have reached an agreement with the Lighthouse countries. Recently, both of us will jointly submit a new plan to the Security Council, intending to establish an elite force led by the United Nations to solve biological and chemical crisis incidents on a global scale. Meow, the title is so difficult, I don't know how to make it attractive. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 214. Chapter 208. The Final Tranquility. An elite force under the leadership of the United Nations, Luo Guang's first reaction was that BSAA was about to be established. Lieutenant General Li replied, "Yes, and your GIMZ troops are actually within our recruitment consideration." Is this the reason for this conversation? Luo Guang was a little unconvinced and once again confirmed whether recruiting him was the purpose of this conversation. Yes, because the soldiers in your unit have rich antibiochemical experience. If our newly established unit wants to grow quickly, veterans with rich antibiochemical experience are indispensable, and they can also save the new soldiers a lot detour. Lieutenant General Li continued, "Of course, we also need the immediate combat capabilities of your troops, so that before others grow up, BSAA also has the ability to deal with biohazard incidents." Luo Guang thought about the benefits his troops could gain from this matter, and asked, "Besides us, who else do you plan to invite?" "We have no plans to invite anyone else." "I understand, do you mean the Red Claws?" Lieutenant General Li guessed. "Yes, we are just mercenaries, but those over there are regular troops. Normally, Shouldn't it be better to let the Red Claw troops join? Although it is a regular army, the Red Claw's force is a NATO coalition force. Even if the United Nations invites them, they will not come. So we plan to use your GIMZ force as the backbone, and then use the peacekeeping forces proposed by various countries as the basis. A global anti-biochemical force. According to Luo Guang's original plan, he planned to cooperate with BSAA, which Gil joined later, one for public and one for private, in order to retain enough anti-biochemical power to provide a way out for Gil after BSAA deteriorated. Tapping his fingers on the desk, Luo Guang said nothing and remained silent. However, Lieutenant General Li seemed to interpret Luo Guang's knocking on the table as waiting for his quotation, and said, "I know you are mercenaries, so I will not let you suffer in terms of salary and bonus. At least it can double your income times." "Sorry, I refuse." Luo Guang finally decided to reject the other party's invitation. "With your income doubled, and the United Nations backing you, you can easily recruit all kinds of talents, and at the same time, you can get assistance from countries around the world, so that your troops can be quickly deployed to perform tasks in countries around the world, and it will be easier when you encounter difficulties. Apply for support and request some heavy weapons that cannot be purchased from arms dealers, etc. These are the advantages of joining the United Nations anti-biochemical forces. As long as the GIMZ force joins them, it can be said that they will reach the sky in one step." Luo Guang is naturally very greedy, but will everything go so smoothly? How many countries will accept BSAA troops operating on their soil? Moreover, Luo Guang knew that BSAA would be established sooner or later. If he really wanted this, there would be no need to go to the trouble of establishing his own anti-biochemical force. Wouldn't it be nice for him to join BSAA directly? There is no need to do so many things and only add to your own troubles. "Can you tell me the reason for your refusal?" Lieutenant General Li did not expect that the other party would refuse his invitation. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Luo Guang has always emphasized that he is a mercenary, but he is indifferent to the high rewards. This inconsistent feeling makes Lieutenant General Li very confused. "Indeed, I am very greedy for the various benefits that our GIMZ can get after joining." Luo Guang first explained that his refusal was not because of Lieutenant General Li's low price. But there is a problem. Although the purpose of the United Nations is to maintain international peace and security, in the final analysis, the United Nations is still composed of countries, and naturally there are various interest disputes and disputes within it. Even if the United Nations anti-biological and chemical force is established, I don't think it can carry out its tasks in all countries. Luo Guang expressed his thoughts, and Lieutenant General Li quickly understood the reason why Luo Guang said this, and said, "You are worried that some people will reach out to the United Nations anti-biochemical forces and let them fight for their own interests. Action. I don't want my troops to turn into tools for those people. Anti-biochemical warfare is not about dividing the cake. The people at the top have evil intentions and will only make the sacrifices of the people below in vain. But as long as we are still mercenaries, whether we accept the mission or not, we still have your own right to make decisions and choices. I will not sacrifice more people for the sake of anti-biochemistry," Luo Guang said. "Although you refused, Boss Wu, what will you do if your people are poached with high salaries?" Lieutenant General Li kindly reminded Luo Guang of the reality that his people are all mercenaries and may not share the same mind as the boss. Many people are sent by other countries or organizations. Those people can just treat them to dinner and send them off. As for the others, just let them go. After all, forceful melons are not sweet." Luo Guang looked like doesn't seem to care. "How about this? We can give you the power to command the troops, and you will be fully responsible for arranging and commanding anti-biochemical missions." Lieutenant General Li understood Luo Guang's previous concerns and changed his strategy. "Do people on both sides think so?" Lieutenant General Li did not have this power, Luo Guang asked with a smile. "I'll help you fight for it." I don't understand why Lieutenant General Li must let my troops join. Luo Guang was very surprised. If the United Nations wants to establish a new anti-biochemical force, who do you think will be the officers and soldiers in this force? This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. From the current situation, it is the Lighthouse Nation, or the NATO system. Luo Guang understood that Wu Song chose the Lighthouse Nation as his nationality because of the Donald family. Although he is Chinese, he has a series of good deeds such as investing in the development of his hometown since he became rich. So Lieutenant General Li and the people behind him will focus on Wu Song, hoping that he will join the United Nations anti-biochemical force to check and balance the people of the Lighthouse Nation. Yes, Boss Wu, so we need someone who is close to us and truly anti-biochemical to become our spokesperson in BSAA. BSAA, that's the name of the unit. Luo Guang pretended not to know the name BSAA and deceived Fang Ling. That's right, Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance. Although the specific rules are still under discussion, the name will be decided soon, Lieutenant General Li said. Well, thank you Lieutenant General Li for telling me these things. Boss Wu, it seems that you have made up your mind. In this case, I will not disturb you to rest. After all, you have just solved a world crisis. Lieutenant General Li saw that Luo Guang still did not agree, and he knew that his recruitment mission had failed. Both parties were busy, so he did not bother to talk and was about to hang up the phone. Wait, Luo Guang spoke to stop Lieutenant General Li from hanging up the phone. Boss Wu, do you have anything else to say? Lieutenant General Li's tone did not change, and he did not hate Luo Guang for this, but he felt a little sorry. I have another anti-biochemical unit to recommend to you, or you can check it out to see if it meets your requirements, Luo Guang said. Recommend? Lieutenant General Li was wondering if there was anyone else who met his country's needs. Luo Guang said, the name is BSS, a recently established anti-biochemical unit. Although the members of this unit are all from the Lighthouse country, one thing is certain, they are all sincerely anti-biochemical. As a second choice, that's why you asked us to investigate. Lieutenant General Li understood what Luo Guang meant and continued to ask, this unit has just been established. What is the composition of the members? Do they have anti-biochemical experience? Lieutenant General Li's words sounded like asking Luo Guang for B.S.SS resume. The basic combat personnel are the survivors of the STARS of the Raccoon City Police Department. They can be trusted in their determination to fight against biochemicals because most of the information about the Raccoon City incident was blocked by the Lighthouse country. Luo Guang also explained to Lieutenant General Li the situation of STARS and the anti-biochemical actions that Jill and others had recently taken. In other words, they can be said to be the first group of people to come into contact with the biochemical crisis, Lieutenant General Li said while thinking. That's right. The problem is that they are all frontline combatants. Although there is now a righteous man named O'Brien assisting them, it is not enough for only one senior executive to be of the same mind as them. You mean that we should send people from the upper level to assist and unite with them from the lower level to ensure that BSAA will not become a tool for ambitious people to make money? Lieutenant General Li reacted and realized that they did not have high requirements for BSAA, as long as they seriously fight against biochemical hazards. I said before that most of the people who would join the BSAA force would be from NATO, but that was because they had the advantage of anti-biochemical experience. But for the upper management officials, there is no such requirement. They only need to ensure logistics and coordinate the BSAA forces to carry out anti-biochemical operations in various countries. Thank you for the advice, Boss Wu. We will act as soon as possible. Luo Guang's idea is just a prototype with many loopholes, so Lieutenant General Li needs to improve it. My idea is not mature yet. It's because the names BSAA and BSS are similar, so I thought of this, Luo Guang said. The two sides exchanged a few more pleasantries and hung up the call. It's almost out of power. Do you want to charge it first, Luo Guang threw the communicator to Fang Ling, who was standing by the door, and said. Fang Ling shook her head and said, "No, I have to return to the team anyway. I hope Boss Wu can lend me a boat." "Okay, I'll have someone take you to the island." "Thank you." Boss Wu had a good discussion with his boss, so Fang Ling was also very polite. After watching Carlos, who volunteered to take Fang Ling away, Luo Guang began to think about the next plan of the GIMZ unit. Luo Guang was not as relaxed as he told Lieutenant General Li that someone would use high salaries to poach his troops. Compared to being a mercenary, isn't it better to find a stable job? What is the so-called freedom of mercenaries? After the establishment of BSAA, will the Echo Squad sent by the Lighthouse Nation be recalled? Will mercenaries like Wang Shuhong change jobs to make more money? For a while, Luo Guang had many negative thoughts in his mind, and even wanted to control all his men with the T Veronica virus, so that he would not have to worry about it here. However, as soon as this idea came to his mind, Luo Guang immediately suppressed it. He had no burden in his heart to control enemies like Collis with the T Veronica virus. But if he did the same to friends like Hank and Carlos, what difference would Luo Guang make from those who plan to use biochemical viruses to control the world? Luo Guang leaned against the back of the leather office chair, closed his eyes, and his brain was still working fast, thinking about countermeasures. Gulala. Suddenly, Luo Guang heard the sound of the office door opening, and opened his eyes. "Jill, what's wrong?" It was Jill who came in. For some reason, Luo Guang and Jill did not take off their masks at this time. After locking the door, Jill did not answer, took off the mask, and walked over to take off Luo Guang's mask, saying, "Tisk, I thought I could see how you change your face." "It's a secret." Luo Guang smiled and replied. Jill looked at Luo Guang's smile, stretched out his hands, pulled Luo Guang's cheeks, and said, "Your smile is so fake now, you know? Your brows are furrowed, what happened?" Luo Guang was about to answer, but he saw Jill rubbing his face harder and said, "Don't tell lies." Jill saw through him, but because his face was pulled, Luo Guang couldn't make any other expressions. His voice was a little different, and he told Jill what had just happened. "You will be busy later," Luo Guang said. Jill let go of his hands, let go of Luo Guang's face, and said, "You should have discussed this with me in advance. I just found out about it, how can I discuss it? This opportunity won't wait for anyone." In Luo Guang's original plan, he should have made a name for himself with Jill and others, and then he would be recruited by BSAA naturally. He never thought that his GIMZ troops would contact the upper echelons of the two countries so quickly, and even be valued by one of them. Although the Lighthouse Nation arranged for people to join the GIMZ force, that was just an investment made casually by the Lighthouse Nation, which was far inferior to Lieutenant General Li's attitude towards the GIMZ force. Rubbing Luo Guang's temple, Jill said, "But you are also very good to your subordinates. I just asked them, and they all think that staying in the GIMZ force is good. Why did they talk to you? Aren't you worried that Carlos will find out?" Luo Guang closed his eyes again, focusing only on Jill's method, and relaxed. "They are also curious about my identity. After all, I have never appeared by your side before, but I learned one thing from them, that you actually hired a secretary. I didn't do anything, and I rarely stay in the GIMZ office." Luo Guang said this very calmly, so he would not be bluffed. "I know, just to see if you are lying." Jill naturally asked other people to understand the situation, and Carlos and the others had some misunderstandings about Jill's identity, so they told Jill without hiding anything. "Next, I should be very busy, I have to go to Chris to help," Jill said silently, which meant that she and Luo Guang would be separated again. Luo Guang replied, "Yes, after the incident at the airport, the biochemical crisis may become normalized in the future. I will try to solve the problem from the source and solve those guys who buy and sell biochemical viruses." Jill hugged Luo Guang from behind, feeling this last tranquility. I am very sorry, the application for lifting the ban in Chapter 206 failed, and it will take 2 days to apply for lifting the ban again, so I can only skip it temporarily. There is a more important information in that chapter. If possible, please go back and check it later. The previous blocking was my own fault, but I really don't understand why this time. I have been learning writing skills recently, but I encountered such a thing, it's uncomfortable. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 215. Chapter 209 Umbrella's Call. Since the airport incident, the world seems to have returned to the state before the Raccoon City incident broke out overnight. The biohazard incident has not appeared in the media and public in this short year. But this does not mean that biohazard incidents have never occurred. It just basically occurred within a village-sized area, so these incidents were resolved before entering the media's sight. And the GIMZ troops solved these incidents. Combined with the income from the training ground in Cape Town, the GIMZ troops have maintained a balance between income and expenditure during these days, and Luo Guang does not need to pay for it himself. As for why the BSAA did not take action, it was because the BSAA was still in the process of establishment and improvement, and could not send anyone at all, and the current GIMZ troops were more well-known and credible. Although it seems that there were no major events that shocked the world in the remaining days of the millennium, Luo Guang of GIMZ, Samus of the Red Claws, and O'Brien, the first commander of the BSAA, could not find the cause of the biochemical crisis in those villages, and there was no clue to the source of the virus. This gave the three people a feeling that a storm was coming, and these small fights were just a small test of the conspirators. In the face of this situation, organizations or countries that are more sensitive to the situation have begun to make various preparations. First, the GIMZ troops returned to Cape Town, South Africa from the Atlantic Ocean. After Luo Guang and Jill stayed in the city for a few days, they said goodbye to each other and continued to fight for the anti-biochemical cause. Afterwards, Luo Guang did not return to the Red Claws. After confirming with Samus that he had nothing to do recently, he had a separate conversation with the people of the GIMZ troops to confirm their wishes. This was a choice Luo Guang made after careful consideration, and it was a good meeting and parting. Luo Guang was the first to find the Kokan team. Because of the battle at the Atlantic Institute, their team suffered heavy losses, and the next step should be to focus on recruiting new members, so Luo Guang thought of doing this as well. To Luo Guang's surprise, after the Atlantic Institute incident, they did not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Instead, the demolitionist Mikhail Pala and the precision shooter with a short haircut who were doing it for money before expressed a certain degree of anti-biochemical intention. As for Luo Guang's mention that someone might poach them in the future, they said that they could learn more here. In simple terms, if they acted together with those anti-biochemical veterans, the probability of survival would be higher, so the reward became their second most important thing. As for the view on recruiting new members, Collis, as the captain, said that he would submit a recommendation list to Luo Guang later. Collis's transformation still made Luo Guang a little uncomfortable, but it was a good thing, so Luo Guang didn't dwell on it and soon went to talk to the wolves. The wolf team said that they were all former Umbrella Corp employees, and it was difficult for them to find a job on the good side. Now that they had a chance to clean up their name, they would not go to other places to work for money, and they said that this place was good enough. Luo Guang could see that the most important person in the wolf team was Wolf Mom, and as long as Wolf Mom did not choose to leave, the wolf team would not disband. And what Wolf Mom valued was naturally her children. As long as the compensation he gave could give her children an excellent living environment, Wolf Mom would not leave easily. The Echo team said that they would follow the instructions of their superiors, but they would definitely not choose to change jobs because of money, which made Luo Guang feel at ease. Caroline also added that she liked the atmosphere of GIMZ and hoped to stay here forever. Regarding this, Luo Guang felt that Caroline just felt that Victor was very much to her taste, and both sides could promote each other to become stronger. Wang Shuhong's Homo sapiens team didn't seem to care much about money, and they felt that being mercenaries at least gave them the opportunity to choose, and they wouldn't be forced to jump into the fire pit. Then they also said that the compensation Luo Guang gave them was enough, and they couldn't spend it all, unless they chose to retire and buy a house. The Homo sapiens team seemed to have the same experience when they served, which made their choices so consistent, but they didn't say it, so Luo Guang naturally wouldn't break the casserole to ask. It was Carlos's team's turn, and Luo Guang talked more with them. "Boss, since we are determined to fight against biochemicals, why don't we join the BSAA team?" "Boss, no matter how rich you are, you can't compare to the multinational organization, right?" Angel Squad's medical soldier Sherry Crow raised her hand and asked. Demolitionist Leopold Camus nodded, indicating that he also had such doubts. "Well, for example, the difference between BSAA and us is probably the difference between a listed company and a non-listed company. I don't want anyone else to interfere in the affairs of the GIMZ team, because you don't know whether the shareholders who join in really want to fight against biochemicals, or just to seek some kind of benefit. In short, Luo Guang is doing this to ensure the purity of the team." "I understand, thank you for your hard work." Boss Shuirui was a little disrespectful and patted Luo Guang's shoulder directly, but Luo Guang didn't care. Carlos looked at Luo Guang and asked, "Boss, I heard from you that BSAA seems to be deteriorating." "Don't you think it won't?" Luo Guang asked back. "That's right, Carlos himself could figure it out. If BSAA wants to carry out antibiochemical missions on a global scale, the power it can control will naturally be huge. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Although NATO countries now have Red Claw troops to protect them, excluding NATO countries, the benefits that can be brought to other regions will not be small. In the eyes of some careerists, BSAA is a new cake that is about to be divided. And if BSAA really deteriorates, then people who are committed to antibiochemical warfare will probably choose to leave BSAA. Then it will be our chance to recruit talents." Luo Guang told them these words to keep them optimistic about the future of GIMZ. Confidence. Shuirui caught up with the topic and said, "So we are the fallback route for those people. I feel relieved now. I was worried before, boss, that you would take us to join that BSAA," Carlos said with a smile. "In fact, no one in the Angel team has any intention of leaving GIMZ, this time is just a small trial." Carlos didn't mention it for the moment, but the other members had chosen to withdraw from the regular army. If they were asked to go back and receive discipline, they would naturally refuse. Sometimes the freedom of mercenaries is indeed more important than high wages, and the wages of GIMZ troops are not low. After talking to Carlos and the others, the next step was to talk to the people from the death team, including Hank, whom Luo Guang valued most. The Chen brothers and the Echo team had similar answers, depending on what the boss meant, so Luo Guang asked them to go out and do things first. At this time, only Hank and Lone Wolf were left sitting opposite Luo Guang in the office. "I listened to the boss." The boss the Lone Wolf mentioned refers to Hank. "He believes in the intuition of the god of death." Hank did not answer Luo Guang's question immediately. At this time, he was thinking about another thing. What is his current goal? Revenge against Umbrella? Hank didn't have many impulses or thoughts of revenge in his heart at this time. Fight biochemical crises and maintain world peace? Hank doesn't have a strong motivation for this, and he feels that he is not a good person. Luo Guang did not rush the other party and waited for Hank's answer. "Since I retired from the army, I have worked as a bodyguard, a mercenary, joined the USS, and finally became an antibiochemical fighter in the GIMZ unit." Hank said slowly, "Over the years, among so many troops, My teammates in the GIMZ unit have the lowest casualty rate. In the eyes of people who didn't know me before, the title of death has already brought death to the enemy. That makes sense. Hearing Hank's words, Lone Wolf's expression changed a little. Although he has always served as Hank's assistant, he and Hank rarely act together. He is basically responsible for leading the second team to respond to Hank. However, many times, he only picked up Hank alone in the end. Unknowingly, other people in the USS gave Hank the nickname the Grim Reaper, and this Grim Reaper meant bringing death to his teammates. Lone Wolf knew that Hank didn't like the nickname, but there was nothing he could do about it. Therefore, the extremely high survival rate of GIMZ troops made Hank feel grateful and relieved, because it proved that Hank did not bear the curse of defeating his teammates. So, Hank, what do you mean? I will stay here. Hank looked at Luo Guang and replied. Thank you. Luo Guang breathed a sigh of relief and asked everyone. It seems that there will be no changes in the current manpower of the GIMZ unit. After finishing this matter and confirming that his subordinates would not change jobs casually, Luo Guang took advantage of this period to formally establish a research laboratory belonging to the GIMZ unit. The person in charge was Linda Baldwin, a botanist whom Luo Guang had met before, and his subordinates were Dr. Linda recommended a group of former Umbrella researchers to Luo Guang. Of course, Dr. Linda did not know Wu Song's true identity, and Luo Guang only played an intermediary role, and later cooperated with Dr. Linda as Wu Song. However, South Africa will not allow the GIMZ force to set up a virus research institute in its important city, so the GIMZ Forces Research Institute is set up in a mysterious place. After Hank found out about this, he jokingly said that the GIMZ troops were now like little umbrellas. After talking about the GIMZ unit, let's talk about the Red Claw unit. After that, things were calm in all NATO countries. After the strange biochemical incident in Spain was resolved, there were no more biohazard incidents within NATO. However, earth-shaking changes took place on the side of the Red Claws. The entire Red Claw force was officially reorganized into an operational force affiliated with the FBC in September 2000. The full name of the FBC is the Federal Biological and Chemical Counterterrorism Committee, which is an organization under NATO led by the Lighthouse State. The first reorganization is the establishment of the European branch of the Red Claw Force. From now on, the European branch, with the EU member states as the main force, will be responsible for biohazard incidents in Europe. The original Red Claw base became the North American branch, and Samus changed from the original Red Claw commander to the director of the North American branch. Although he was unwilling to let the army he created become someone else's wedding dress, Samus did not take any unwise actions, while Tanya, who was unhappy with Morgan, began to consider whether to work elsewhere. That's right, this FBC organization is led by Morgan Lansdale, who also serves as the Director of National Biological Prevention of the Lighthouse Nation. However, the headquarters of the Red Claws did not move to the FBC headquarters, but to the NATO headquarters. This is one of the results of negotiations between the Lighthouse Nation and other NATO parties. This chapter is not yet finished. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. The long time it took to deal with the Benoy Island incident did not allow Morgan to intervene in the Red Claws in the end, but Morgan, who was looking for other ways, finally got his wish and took down the Red Claws. At this time, Morgan's power was constantly expanding, and soon he was not satisfied with the jurisdiction of his own organization and extended his sights to more distant lands. But in October 2000, the long-prepared BSAA was officially announced. Although the number of people it had was not as good as the FBC organization that packaged the Red Claws, it unexpectedly became an obstacle to Morgan's development of power and directly became a thorn in Morgan's eyes. Then, due to the reorganization, the Special Operations Team, which had never been fully staffed, was disbanded. Since he had no chance to act independently if he continued to stay in the Red Claws, Luo Guang chose to submit his resignation letter and officially left the Red Claws, focusing on the GIMZ and real estate investment. Neither Tanya nor Samus tried to keep Luo Guang, but approved his application very readily, so Luo Guang had so much time to deal with various affairs in the GIMZ afterwards. There is one more thing to say. That is Wang Wei. Since she asked for leave, she has not returned to the Red Claws. She has not contacted Samus for a long time and was directly expelled by Samus, and Gaul did not express any protest. So where did Wang Wei go? Luo Guang didn't know either. All the previous contact information was cut off, as if this person never existed. However, Luo Guang had some guesses about this, that is, the Apocalypse organization might be planning some conspiracy after getting the Eternal Virus, because just after the Berlin mission, when Luo Guang contacted Wang Wei again, the phone number became an empty number. Anyway, since we are talking about Wang Wei, let's talk about Ada Wang, who is somewhat similar to Wang Wei. She didn't stay in Simmons' hands for too long and escaped, which made Simmons angry and cleaned up all the guards guarding Ada Wang. And after that, Ada completely disappeared. Even if Simmons wanted to send Luo Guang out to catch people again, he couldn't do it. Next, let's talk about the BSAA troops. The investigation on the side of the Lieutenant General was very fast, and he also found out the identities of Jill and others and their deeds of tracking down Umbrella Corporation, so the two sides met soon. Jill, represented by O'Brien, had a round of talks with the Lieutenant General. In the end, the two sides had a round of friendly negotiations and reached a preliminary cooperation agreement. Finally, the BSAA was formed by 4 people from the BSS force and personnel sent by the two countries. A total of 11 people formed the foundation of the BSAA. At the same time, in order to commemorate the establishment of the global anti-biological and chemical forces, these 11 people were called the founders of the BSAA. There was a small detail in the middle of this matter, that is, Steve, who was thrown into the GIMZ force to receive systematic combat training, did not become one of the founders in the end, which made Steve sad for a long time. After the establishment of the BSAA force, it immediately launched lobbying actions in various countries. As a result, 70% of the members accepted the BSAA to act on their territory, while the rest of the countries only accepted the BSAA to act under constraints. Most small countries are actually the hotbeds for biological and chemical terror, and these countries are basically within the 70%, so O'Brien, the leader of the BSAA at the time, expressed that he could accept this result. As for why O'Brien, who has little background, can successfully become the leader? That is because the two countries that initiated this plan, although they cooperated, did not trust each other, so they let the neutral O'Brien take the position of leader. January 1, 2001 came quietly on the eve of this storm. After arranging all matters, Luo Guang took the full set of weapons and equipment he prepared, boarded a private plane, and headed to a mysterious place. The call from Umbrella finally came. "Thank you for your comfort, Meow. I'll trouble you who didn't have time to watch chapter 206 to come back and watch it when the time comes." Originally, there would be a plot where Bruce and Fang Ling went back to report, and a more detailed description of the changes in the world's situation, but judging from the situation in the past 2 days, it can't be written. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 216. Chapter 210 The Last Fortress of Umbrella. The plane sent by Umbrella to pick people up was not small, but it was not the kind of passenger plane that could carry hundreds of people. After getting on the plane, Luo Guang observed it for a while. Judging from the number of seats, it could accommodate 50 passengers, but only half of the seats were occupied at this time, and there was no flight attendant in the plane to provide any service. The interior decoration of the cabin was also very simple, which made Luo Guang a little unconvinced that this was a special plane provided by Umbrella. However, None of the people present were spoiled people, so no one expressed any complaints. The only thing that happened during the whole process was that the captain appeared in front of everyone and said hello before the plane took off. The people present were dressed differently. Some of them looked like old gentlemen, and some looked like blue-collar workers. The captain did not say that they could not talk, so after someone started, everyone quickly started to communicate in twos and threes. After Luo Guang pricked up his ears to eavesdrop on what others were asking each other, he found that the common point of the people present was that all of them were senior intelligence officers of Umbrella. And without exception, everyone present was assigned to a lurking mission after Umbrella could no longer reverse its decline. Brother, when I got on the plane just now, I saw you carrying a big bag. Is it a rifle? A senior intelligence officer who was good at chatting up people and obtaining intelligence through chatting asked Luo Guang curiously. The other party did not even tell Luo Guang a pseudonym. Luo Guang was now wearing a bulletproof suit made of hardened armor, and he did not introduce himself, but directly answered the other party's question. Since the Raccoon City incident, the company has not contacted us even when it encountered great difficulties, but now that the Lighthouse country has begun to relax its pursuit of the company has contacted us instead, which is inconsistent with the original arrangement. At first, Luo Guang received the lurking order when he was lurking in the Red Claws, but when Umbrella contacted Luo Guang, it asked him to end his lurking, quit his job in the Red Claws, and then arrive at the gathering place within 4 days. From this call, Luo Guang knew one thing, that is, Umbrella did not arrange people to monitor him, otherwise they would not know that Luo Guang had left the Red Claws long ago. Do you think something big is going to happen, so are you prepared? Answering with questions can reduce the possibility of leaking information. Luo Guang nodded and asked back, otherwise, what do you think is the reason for summoning so many senior intelligence officers? Haha, no matter what the reason is, the fact that so many senior intelligence officers were summoned this time can explain one thing, that is, this mission is not simple, so it is normal to bring a long gun, isn't it? The other party said so, showing Luo Guang the black desert eagle on his waist, which was a hint that he also had such an idea, so he brought a powerful pistol with him. No. I'm just worried that this plane will crash and fall into some dangerous place, so I have a long gun with me for self-defense. If there is really any difficult mission, do you think the company will not provide us with enough weapons and ammunition? Ha, it seems that you have a bit of bad luck. So I know myself, Luo Guang replied. Haha, the other party did not believe Luo Guang's words. People with bad luck will not live long in this line of work, but he did not expose it. After all, who in their line of work does not have some secrets? Luo Guang did not hide anything, but he did not want to be like the protagonist of the Resident Evil game, who only brought a small pistol and few bullets when he first appeared in each game to carry out the mission. Although they are all senior intelligence officers, there should be some sideways, right? If it is a combat mission, non-professional combat intelligence officers should not be allowed to come, which means that this mission involves many aspects. Luo Guang observed the other people around him, also to obtain more information and continue the topic. The intelligence officer with social phobia heard Luo Guang's words, and also looked at the senior intelligence officers around him, then nodded and said, yes, for example, the old man over there, I know him, he is good at lurking in the homes of dignitaries as a housekeeper to steal intelligence, and his physical condition is not suitable for combat missions at all. Luo Guang followed the other party's gaze and nodded. But Luo Guang didn't say that because of the old man. After all, he didn't know the old man, so who knew if he was strong, especially stronger than the one in the Finger universe. In fact, Luo Guang saw that the talkative guy next to him didn't have much fighting power. The reason was simple. He used a .50 AE caliber Desert Eagle, but his figure and the calluses on his hands didn't look like he had practiced shooting. This gun is very powerful, but the recoil is greater than many submachine guns and assault rifles, and the ammunition capacity is not large. In fact, it is not suitable for most combat occasions. After all, this gun is designed only as a target gun and hunting pistol. This Desert Eagle is too big and too heavy compared to other pistols because of its long bullet and large recoil, and if the wrist is unstable when firing, it may cause the shell to fail to be ejected, weak wrist shooting. Too large will make it difficult to conceal and carry, too heavy means that the gun cannot be held up for a long time to aim, and it is not conducive to operations such as quick draw, so this Desert Eagle is not a suitable combat or self-defense pistol. Of course, this weapon was not designed for actual combat, so it cannot be said that the design of this gun is problematic or too idealistic. That is why Luo Guang judged that the other party was not good at fighting. Just as Luo Guang guessed, the opponent is best at talking nonsense, and the weapon on his body is just for bluffing. Recently, due to movies and games, the powerful image of the Desert Eagle has been deeply rooted in people's hearts, so recently he has been using this weapon to pretend to intimidate those gangsters, so as to collect intelligence on underground forces for Umbrella Company. Although Luo Guang guessed that the opponent should have another gun for self-defense, considering the opponent's body and the calluses on his hands, Luo Guang can still make a judgment. The plane took off from a small airport in Romania. The flight time was about 2 hours, and the final landing place was a small airport. At this time, it was dark. Luo Guang got off the plane with his luggage. Looking at the snowy environment in front of him, he couldn't help but feel fortunate that the weapon he brought this time was a modified AK-74M assault rifle. Compared with the AR series, the weapons of the AK series are more outstanding in cold and frost resistance. This is determined by the geographical environment of the Bear country where the AK series was developed. On the contrary, if you encounter an environment like mud, the performance of the AK series is not better than the current AR series. The truck that came to pick people up was a large truck with snow camouflage. The original cargo box at the back was modified to look like a bus, with seats on both sides facing each other. Luo Guang quickly put on the weapons and equipment in the luggage bag, and without slowing down the whole group, he boarded the truck last. This car is unmanned. It was still the chatterbox intelligence officer. Through the small window between the cargo box and the cab, he found that there was no one in the front driver's seat, but the steering wheel moved by itself. Intelligent driving? Was there such advanced technology in 2001? Hearing that, Luo Guang was more curious than surprised. Umbrella's computer technology department is actually a very powerful department. The technology development in this world is much faster than the world before Luo Guang crossed over. Other senior intelligence officers seemed to know this technology, so there was no surprise on their faces, but it is not ruled out that their expression management was too good. The journey took about 10 minutes by car. The road was not easy to walk on and it was a steep slope, so the old intelligence officer felt a little uncomfortable sitting. In the end, Luo Guang lent the empty luggage bag to the old man to cushion his buttocks. Finally, Luo Guang and his team finally arrived at their destination, a place that looked like an oil refinery. Tyrant. Luo Guang saw a giant wearing a silver-white restraint suit standing at the door. There was an electronic instrument covering his eyes, and there was a green bright strip in the middle of the instrument, which looked very sci-fi. Other senior intelligence officers were naturally very familiar with the Tyrant. After all, it was an excellent product of Umbrella Company. However, they had never seen this model before, so they couldn't help but take a few more glances. In addition to the Tyrant, Luo Guang also saw the figures of cleaners appearing around, holding assault rifles in their hands, and they were about to surround Luo Guang and his group. Those who were good at fighting noticed the situation, holding weapons in their hands, and looked at the cleaners vigilantly. "Don't be nervous, they are soldiers protecting here," a voice came from the Tyrant. The Tyrant did not open his mouth. Luo Guang discovered that the Tyrant was carrying a loudspeaker, and the voice came from there. It should be the person responsible for controlling the tyrant. Who are you? Someone asked this simple and plain question. I am Sergei Vladimir, the captain of the guard of Umbrella Corporation. This is the last fortress of Umbrella Corporation, and I am the highest guard commander of this fortress. Not only his identity, Sergei also told everyone where this place was. Luo Guang was secretly happy. Although he had expected it, he was just guessing before the mystery was revealed. Why did you ask us to come here? Someone asked. Sergei did not hesitate at all, and did not seem to be joking. He answered, to make Umbrella stand on this world again. Today, all stores of Umbrella Corporation have been closed, and all bank accounts have been frozen. Fortunately, Spencer was well prepared. There are still many companies under his command that have no connection with Umbrella Corporation on the surface, and they are secretly working for Umbrella Corporation to return to the world stage. We need specific information. We will have it, but this is not the place to talk. The superiors who assigned you the undercover mission are waiting inside. They will be responsible for telling you the specific information. Ivan, give them the pass cards, Sergei commanded. Ivan was the name of the tyrant in front of him. After hearing Sergei's order, he turned around and moved a box behind him to the front, and then opened it. Inside were blue LCD blocks. This is your pass card, which can be installed directly on the watch. Luo Guang took the initiative to step forward and took one first. He raised his left hand and installed the pass card on it. With a click, it seemed that the design of the electronic watch had been prepared for this use. There were two hooks at both ends of the pass card that could be stuck in the two grooves of the watch to fix it. The translucent pass card covered the screen of the electronic watch and did not affect the time. However, what Luo Guang saw when he raised his hand was not the time, but the words "the system is updating." Luo Guang used the technology from the X organization to confirm that this watch had no tracking or monitoring devices, but from now on, it seems that this electronic watch still seems to be hiding many secrets. I don't know what the purpose of this system update is. With Luo Guang taking the lead, others also stepped forward to get one. But not everyone wore the kind of electronic watch that looked like a sports bracelet. For example, the old man installed the pass card on a pocket watch that looked very old. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. After the senior intelligence officers completed the program installation, Sergei instructed, "This pass card is the guarantee for your activities in the fortress. If you don't have a pass card, you will be directly killed by the base's automatic defense system, so keep it safe." For this reason, Sergei sent the tyrant to stop everyone outside the door. Everyone nodded, and then no one talked. They silently followed the tyrant Ivan and walked into the last fortress of Umbrella Corporation. After entering, Ivan left alone, led by a captain of the cleaners, and did not do security checks. It seems that he thought that everyone who came to this place was loyal. Luo Guang noticed that the bracelets carried by the cleaners should be passes from the outside. The cleaner's pass is red, which seems to represent the danger of the holder. However, Luo Guang was thinking about a question. If he shot the cleaner's pass, would the base's system activate defense measures to deal with the cleaner? The group came to a huge conference room, and Luo Guang saw many familiar high-level officials of the Chicago branch. However, what surprised Luo Guang was that Ghislain Dennis, the director of the Virology Research Department of the Chicago branch of the X organization, was not here. Did he really retire and didn't summon him? If so, it would be fine. He was worried that Ghislain's identity in the X organization was exposed. On second thought, if this was the case, he should not be summoned to this place because he had a good relationship with Ghislain. Although he didn't know the specific coordinates here, there was always a risk of leaking the location of the last fortress of Umbrella, so he should not have been exposed. Luo Guang consciously sat in the chair behind the director of the Chicago branch. Other senior intelligence officers did the same, sitting behind their superiors. There were no decorations in this conference room, and there was only a bottle of mineral water in front of everyone, without a brand, in a plastic bottle. But no one picked it up to drink, because the intelligence officers were particularly cautious and worried that there might be viruses in the water. Luo Guang and other senior intelligence officers seemed to be the last batch of people. Not long after they sat down, Sergei came out with two Evon tyrants and stood on the podium. Let the meeting officially begin. Sergei looked around the entire conference room, looking majestic. Today, 206 tried to unblock the cat again, otherwise he would lose his full attendance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 217. Chapter 211 Rebirth Plan. As soon as Sergei finished speaking, the projection of the Umbrella Company logo behind him began to gradually become transparent. The name of the Rebirth Plan gradually emerged in front of everyone. It felt like a company annual meeting for some reason, Luo Guang thought to himself. The ministers sitting in the front were whispering to each other, discussing the meaning of these four words, while Luo Guang and other senior intelligence officers sat upright, and no one whispered to each other. However, not communicating does not mean that Luo Guang and others don't care. After seeing the name of the Rebirth Plan, these senior intelligence officers, like those ministers, were thinking about the meaning of the word rebirth in their hearts. The theme of this meeting was to inform everyone in the audience about the company's decision, not to discuss the plan, so the next step was a detailed introduction to the Rebirth Plan. The true face of the plan is about to be revealed, but... Sergei frowned as he watched the discussions of the ministers in the audience. It was because the people below were not his soldiers, otherwise he would have asked the tyrant Ivan beside him to kick the loudest person and teach them what politeness is. Sergei Vladimir once served as a colonel in the Soviet Special Forces, the predecessor of the Bear Country, and his style of managing his subordinates was very strict. As part of the Soviet super soldier mass production plan, that is, the Human Cloning Research Project, researchers successfully cloned 10 clones using Sergei's somatic cells. Later, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the newly established Bear Country was no longer financially capable of providing funds for such a large army, so it began a 2-year military reorganization and disbandment. Many soldiers, including Sergei, were retired and unemployed. Perhaps out of consideration for covering up the Human Cloning Research Plan, the service experience of Sergei and others who participated in this plan was directly cleared, and the army was sent to clean up the clones who were still alive. Taking this opportunity, Umbrella took advantage of the unemployment of a large number of soldiers to expand its paramilitary organizations including the USS and UBCS. Taking this opportunity, Umbrella learned of the existence of Sergei, a powerful soldier. Therefore, Sergei's talent was appreciated by Umbrella and he was invited, but Sergei did not directly accept the company's invitation. Instead, he put forward a condition: rescue his clone. Umbrella learned about the cloning plan and was very interested in those clones, so it naturally agreed to Sergei's conditions. Sergei was very grateful to the company for rescuing his clones, because in Sergei's eyes, these clones were like his family. The surprise that Sergei brought to Umbrella was not only his combat ability. In the subsequent physical examination, the company found that Sergei was one of the people with a small probability compatible with the T-virus. Later, under Spencer's persuasion, Sergei chose to hand over his clones and participate in the company's tyrant plan. The two Evon tyrants beside him were one of the results. The original purpose of the Tyrant Project was to cooperate with the Lighthouse Nation to create super soldiers for the Lighthouse Nation's army. Or to be more precise, it was to provide super soldiers for Organization X. As mentioned before, Organization X also conducted its own super soldier projects, namely Plan A, which used mechanical prostheses for transformation, and Plan B, which used genetic engineering and drug enhancement technology. As a result, both plans ended in failure. The school of Plan B was closed, leaving only two rare achievements, Emma Greenwell and Jack Jones, who survived to this day. Although it encountered setbacks, Organization X would naturally not give up the Super Soldier project, but instead looked for another way and turned to Umbrella, or Umbrella to Organization X. Because the founder of Umbrella, Oswell Edward Spencer, was the patriarch of the Spencer family, a noble family of Ying, and the family happened to be an organization established by a group of nobles. Unfortunately, because Spencer's family only had the title of nobility, the glory of their ancestors was no longer there, and they were eliminated from the family organization a long time ago. Umbrella concealed the research data of biological virus from Simmons, the current leader of Organization X, and the Raccoon City incident made Organization X decide to cancel the qualification of accepting the Spencer family back into the family. Otherwise, Umbrella would not have fallen to such a state now. Back to the meeting, Sergei's silence was obeyed by everyone present. Although Sergei's position and rank were not higher than those of the heads of the continental branches present, and the two sides were on the same level, those heads of the continental branches knew that Sergei was trusted by Spencer and he could be regarded as Spencer's mouthpiece. So when facing the Evon tyrant on both sides of Sergei, these ministers were very obedient, because they had seen the tyrant and did not think that they and the senior intelligence officers behind them could protect themselves. Seeing that the meeting room had returned to silence, Sergei switched the slides and continued, "The rebirth plan is about our umbrella company being reborn. But unlike before, it does not mean that the company will reopen and go public, because the enemy will not allow us to rise again." Everyone suppressed their doubts and expectations and continued to wait for Sergei's words. "We want to become the devil who threatens the whole world." Sergei's words were full of second-year feelings. Fortunately, Luo Guang did not drink the water, otherwise he would have sprayed it out. The corners of the mouths of the people around him also twitched, as if they felt funny and ashamed about this statement. "Let's just talk about the specific plan, and forget about the opening speech," the director of the European branch said, took out a box of cigarettes, and asked the two ministers beside him, "Do you mind?" "Give me one," the director of the American branch said he also needed one, and the other person didn't smoke but didn't mind. This opening speech was actually what Spencer asked Sergei to write and say, because he felt that the company's situation was not good now, so he needed to boost the morale of his subordinates. Originally, it was thought that Sergei was an officer who led a team and should be good at giving speeches to boost morale, but Sergei was not good at these. However, Sergei was the kind of person who would seriously execute orders after receiving them, so he did not refuse Spencer or raise the issue that he was not suitable for writing speeches, but instead prepared carefully. Hearing what the director of the European branch said, Sergei was relieved, crumpled up the speech with thousands of words in front of him, and threw it into the corner of the podium. Then Sergei continued, "More than a year ago, we successfully developed a biological weapon called Cleaner, which is the one we showed you before. But Cleaner is just their previous name. After improvement and adjustment, they are now called Undertaker." Sergei looked at the Americas branch and said, "This is a biological weapon with basic capabilities equal to those of a skilled soldier. Speaking of this, I have to thank the blood plague virus provided by the Research Institute under the Americas branch. I don't need to say more about the specific situation. Anyway, during this period of time, the production line of the fortress was fully opened. We have produced nearly 70,000 Undertaker, and these biological weapons are the cornerstone of our company's rebirth." The head of the African branch raised his hand to speak. After Sergei nodded, he did not stand up and ask directly, "Is the ability of the Undertaker as high as you said? If we have 70,000, we can conquer a few small countries, but our enemies will not sit idly by. It is impossible to use so many biological weapons to overthrow the existing order. Sergei knew which countries the enemy was referring to, and replied, "The company has no such plan, and is well aware of the possibility of this situation. So our target is the underground forces around the world. We will not confront the enemy head-on, but secretly deliver resources and support other industries controlled by the company in secret." The director of the Oceania branch frowned and asked, "Is it necessary to make so much trouble? The second half of the matter can be completed without these mourners. And what our company did in the Amazon before has made the underground forces unable to tolerate us. We will be attacked by the crowd. 70,000 biological weapons are not too much if they are dispersed," the director of the South American branch also said. Sergei nodded and explained to everyone, "In this plan, we don't plan to deal with those scumbags. It is enough to use our powerful mourners to defeat the largest round table in the underground world." "I have no problem," the heads of various branches nodded. There were no other problems for the time being. As for whether Sergei's explanation can be done, that is not what they should worry about now. They should try their best to solve the problems that arise. As for senior intelligence officers, they have no right to speak here. As a former social animal, Luo Guang naturally would not force himself to stand out in such an occasion and express his own opinions and suggestions, otherwise it would appear that his superiors are incompetent. Based on the content of the plan that Sergei said now, Luo Guang thought of a possibility, that is, the ultimate goal of Umbrella Corporation is not to rule the world, but to gain living space for itself and let other countries acquiesce in Umbrella's survival in the dark. But because of what Umbrella did before, the company has become a rat crossing the street, and countries will not negotiate with the company at all now, so these troops composed of mourners and various biochemical viruses are the bargaining chips for the company to pull those countries back to the negotiation table. The purpose of calling everyone together this time is to let you lead the mourners and announce the return of Umbrella around the world. Because most of the people present had left Umbrella in advance or even defected from the company, they were not marked and could act without being monitored. After Sergei finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the mourners below distributed the deployment table to everyone. Luo Guang took the A4 paper in his hand and quickly confirmed the planned deployment. The positions and responsibilities of each minister and senior intelligence officer were clearly written on the paper. If this was not a test of Umbrella's loyalty, the intelligence value of this thin piece of A4 paper in Luo Guang's hand at this time could be said to be priceless. Just in case you are still monitored, this time we have adopted the method of disrupting the subordinates because the countries will not exchange all information. Sergei made such an arrangement. Some people who are more suspicious think that this is because Umbrella Corporation does not trust them. The director of the Oceania branch said, "In that case, the subordinates and manpower we arranged before will be in vain. Let me say something unpleasant, after our ministers are exchanged, will the people under our command still obey the command? This minister meant that the vassal of my vassal is not my vassal." Sergei stared at the director of the Oceania branch who was speaking and said, "This is the company's decision." The director of the Oceania branch was not timid, and his eyes did not avoid, "You and I are on the same level, you have no right to teach me how to do things, I want to file a complaint." If it were a cartoon, the two of them would probably have fought with their eyes at this time. Finally, Sergei retracted his gaze, scanned the venue, and asked, "Does anyone else think so? I can exchange with the director of the European branch." The director of the American branch did not directly refuse, but only proposed a small change. The director of the American branch and the director of the European branch can be said to be a pair of happy enemies. Although the research institutes under the two sides have been competing, the relationship between the two people above is not bad, and the personnel of both sides are also familiar. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Sergei nodded and waited for the answers of others. The director of the Oceania branch looked at the director of the Asian branch for support, but the director of the Asian branch did not look at him. The director of the Asian branch does not like that stingy and selfish guy. Only the director of the Oceania branch thinks that he is loved by everyone and that flowers bloom when he sees them, and thinks that he is a friend of others. Only the director of the Oceania branch protested, and the atmosphere in the meeting room was a bit awkward for a while. Congratulations to most people for making a wise choice. Sergei finished speaking, raised his hand and fired a shot, hitting the head of the Oceania branch in the middle of his eyebrows. The heads of various city branches and senior intelligence officers behind the head of the Oceania branch did not react, and looked at Sergei in horror, as well as the mourners who silently dragged the body away. A sense of oppression enveloped everyone. Sergei, who was murderous, did not explain why he shot and killed the head of the Oceania branch, and continued to explain the rebirth plan. It will take about half a month for the 70,000 mourners to complete their deployment around the world. During this period, in order to keep it secret, I need all of you present to be on standby here. The more Luo Guang listened, the more strange it felt. This plan was full of strangeness. Since those mourners needed to be deployed, was it necessary for everyone here to gather so quickly? It was said that everyone was kept here for confidentiality, but in fact the best way to keep it secret was not to let so many people know about the plan. Moreover, it was such an important plan, but Sergei or the Sabines behind him simply told everyone the deployment plans of all parties. The deployment was told to everyone in detail, but a more detailed action plan was not formulated or told to the people present. All kinds of inconsistencies made Luo Guang a little confused. After thinking for a while, and judging from Sergei's action of killing an umbrella company executive with one shot without hesitation, he felt that the past half-month might be a loyalty test arranged by umbrella company to clean up those who dared to oppose the company's decision. And only those who passed the test would get the final action plan of the rebirth plan, or the real content of the rebirth plan. Meow, 206 has been unsealed. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 218. Chapter 212 Test of Loyalty. What do you think of this plan? The chatty senior intelligence officer kept looking for Luo Guang for some reason. Luo Guang glanced at the other party, pointed to the door on the left, and said, "Your room is here." Okay, the other party saw that Luo Guang didn't want to say anything to him, and he didn't want to pester him. He planned to make plans later, so he swiped his card and walked into the room. The accommodations of senior intelligence officers are all in the same place, and Luo Guang's room is in the penultimate room at the end, so he has to keep going forward. The road to this fortress is not roundabout. After leaving the conference room, we walked a short distance to the dormitory area. The internal monitoring equipment here is very complete. For example, the corridor that we are walking down is less than 50 meters away. There is a camera, and a 360-degree rotating camera is installed in the middle of the corridor to ensure that there are no blind spots for surveillance. The surveillance here was so tight that he didn't believe that no monitoring equipment was installed, so Luo Guang didn't want to say anything else to other people. Chicago branch director Saul Kalin also saw Luo Guang, but he just nodded and did not take the initiative to talk to Luo Guang, nor did he give Luo Guang any hint. Luo Guang came to the room he was assigned, glanced around, and found that there was only a steel bed, a table, a chair, and no other furniture. There was a bathroom sign in the corner. Luo Guang went up to check it out. It was a toilet and a hidden sink hidden in the wall. Apart from that, there were no pillows or quilts, and there was only a pencil and a blank notebook on the table. Luo Guang looked up at a surveillance camera in the corner of the ceiling and frowned. He didn't like the feeling of being spied on. And this room is more like a dormitory than a prison cell. After the meeting, Sergei returned to his office and said to the heir, "Red Emperor, help me contact the boss." Copy that. A cold female voice sounded in the room, and then a red female stereoscopic projection appeared behind Sergei. This is the advanced artificial intelligence of Umbrella Company's Caucasus Fortress. It is more powerful than the artificial intelligence Morpheus got, but it has not yet developed to the point of having emotions. The big driverless truck before was controlled by the Red Emperor. Sergei, Spencer's look appeared on the big screen. At this time, Spencer looked very old. In order to save energy, he sat in an electric wheelchair, with a Tyrant-type biochemical weapon standing behind him. However, compared with the image in the game, Spencer's body is not filled with needles and infusions at this time, his eyes are still bright, and his body looks healthy from the outside. These are the results of the anti-aging drugs manufactured by Umbrella. But this is only a temporary solution. Recently, Spencer has felt that the efficacy of those anti-aging drugs is getting weaker and weaker, so he has advanced the rebirth plan that should start 4 years later. Boss, everyone on the list is here. They have no suspicion and have now entered the cell to rest. Sergei paused and then asked, Boss, do we really need to do this? If Alex's plan. Spencer raised his hand to stop Sergei's next words and said, I'm not old enough not to know the risks of this plan. But when I look back at Umbrella over the years, I find that even though loyalty is engraved in the company's motto, there are still endless traitors in the company. Why do you think that's the reason? Before Sergei could answer, Spencer only cared about the result, and continued with anger in his words, I gave them all the money and power, but they still betrayed my trust. But the people here should be invited here only if the boss thinks they are trustworthy, right? Naturally, Sergei would not touch Spencer's bad luck and adopt a roundabout strategy. All he could say was to make Spencer think twice, otherwise the plan would be irreversible once it started. Yes. Spencer looked a little gloomy and said, at first, Alex suggested that the company's middle and high-level people should receive virus injections, and then I rejected her suggestion. After all, now is the time for the company to hire people. The next step is Sergei thought to himself. But Michael Harcourt, the director of the Oceania branch, actually betrayed me with his group of people. Spencer clenched his hands, exposing his veins. Sergei also knew about Michael's betrayal, otherwise he would not have killed the minister with one shot as he was on the same level as him. According to the calculations of the Red Emperor, after I killed Michael with one shot, most of the people were frightened by us. I think they will not be rebellious again. Shock is a good word, Sergei. But this shock will not last long, and soon they will forget the fear caused by Michael's death. Spencer was silent for a while and said, loyalty is not absolute, it is absolutely disloyal. Who are those who were not shocked? The artificial intelligence Red Emperor gave the statistics to Sergei, and Sergei named them one by one based on the list. There were 13 people in total, including Luo Guang's name. In this rebirth plan, let's first remove their names. Copy that. The Red Emperor's voice sounded at the right time, overlapping with Sergei's voice. Luo Guang lay on the bed for a while, studying his electronic watch. It was said to be an upgrade, but Luo Guang didn't see any new functions, it was still just the functions of an ordinary watch. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. After returning disappointed, Luo Guang left the bed and walked towards the door. However, no matter how Luo Guang swiped the pass, the door in front of him did not move. The LCD screen on the card reader showed the words verification failed. Luo Guang did not rashly use brute force to break the door open, but tore a piece of paper, wrote the words "Let me out" on it, and then held it in front of the camera. The artificial intelligence Red Emperor has been monitoring everyone and immediately saw this situation. However, the Red Emperor did not pay attention. In her field of vision, Luo Guang was not the only one who found that they were locked in the room, but Luo Guang's next behavior was a little different. Captain Sergei, another person found himself trapped, the Red Emperor reported. Didn't I tell you to just ignore it? But the other party is using the paper in the room to ask us. At this time, Luo Guang changed a piece of paper and wrote, "I know you saw my message." Hong Huang showed Sergei the surveillance of Luo Guang's room, and Sergei took a look and asked, "Do you think he discovered your existence?" If it weren't the case, Hong Huang wouldn't bother himself with such a small matter. The intelligence is not enough to provide specific possible data, but I think he may have noticed some clues. Every time I use the monitor to observe the object, the other party will look back. Since the intelligence is insufficient, continue to observe. And start planning to deal with those who are not on the pardon list. Sergei wrote down Luo Guang's name and said. Received. Hong Huang responded. Luo Guang threw away the paper in his hand and tried to swipe the card to open the door again, but it still didn't work. Just as he scratched his head and thought about what to do, the people in the rooms on both sides kept wailing. The elites and middle and senior executives in various fields of Umbrella Corporation only felt difficulty breathing, fever, itchy skin, and kept scratching their bodies with their hands. They did not feel any pain. When they looked at their hands, they found that they were full of blood. The whole piece of skin was torn off by themselves without knowing it. This is a new virus developed by Alex Wesker. Because the virus is not yet complete, Alex has not officially named it. Now it is called E-virus according to her habit, and E means emotion. This name is because the E-virus is affected by human emotions, and Alex proposed to Spencer to use this virus to control the middle and senior executives of the company based on this characteristic. At this time, the E-virus is entering the rooms of those middle and senior executives through the vents under the iron bed, quickly polluting the air, and then infecting the people trapped in the room. However, to successfully control, it is necessary to transplant the parasite Nemesis Alpha in the host, so the Red Emperor is mobilizing troops and arranging the Undertaker to control those infected people, and then injecting the parasite into their spine. The infection is complete, and the Undertaker is carrying out the recovery mission. Hong Huang reported the mission to Sergei in time according to the progress of the mission. Clean up the traces as soon as possible, and then summon the pardoned personnel to the conference room here. Received. The room where Luo Guang was located was very soundproof, but at this time, no matter how sharp his hearing was, he could not hear what was happening around him. After changing 7 or 8 sentences, Luo Guang still did not receive any feedback. When he was thinking about whether to turn against him and tear down the door of the room opened by itself. Commander Sergei asked you to go to the conference room with me. An Undertaker appeared at the door and said to Luo Guang. The Undertaker's voice was very hoarse, and the pronunciation of the words was a bit inaccurate. Without intelligence support, Luo Guang could not judge the situation, so he still brought his weapons and equipment. The Undertaker did not receive any instructions such as prohibiting the carrying of guns, so it did not stop Luo Guang's behavior. Luo Guang followed the Undertaker out of the room and found that the road he was taking now was different from the road from the conference room to the dormitory before. "Isn't this the road to the conference room?" Luo Guang asked. Not the previous meeting room. The intelligence of the Undertaker was enough for it to understand and answer Luo Guang's question. Luo Guang's face showed doubt, but the weapons in the hands of these Undertaker were the same as those of the cleaners on Sina Island before, which were all submachine guns such as MP5, which were not enough to pose a threat to him. So Luo Guang did not act rashly. At this time, his most important goal was to find out the conspiracy of Umbrella Corporation. To Luo Guang's surprise, after walking for 7 or 8 minutes, they actually came to a subway platform. The platform was built with stone as the main material. Although it was in the damp underground, there was no moss growing on the stone. It should have been built not long ago or had been cleaned daily. In addition to me, there were only 12 people. Luo Guang counted the number of people, including himself, a total of 13 people. This number is not a good number. Among the 13 people, there were 7 senior intelligence officers like Luo Guang, and the remaining 5 ministers. The director of the Chicago branch who originally came here was not on the list at this time. Naturally, the others also noticed that something was wrong. Even though some people had a premonition that what was about to happen might be a hangman banquet, they did not dare to move when they saw the undertakers around them holding submachine guns. After boarding the underground train, it took about 10 minutes to reach the next station. Luo Guang looked around the platform. The materials here were all steel. It felt like entering a science fiction world from the Age of Enlightenment. This chapter is not yet finished. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Everyone followed the undertaker and walked into the double-opening steel door on the platform. This door is made according to the specifications of anti-nuclear bombs, the intelligence officer next to Luo Guang whispered. He wanted to find teammates in case something happened later and huddled together for warmth in advance. Maybe this is the real fortress, Luo Guang replied, which could explain why the conference room was so close to the dormitory area, so why he and others were locked up. Otherwise, if you run around and visit, you will easily find that the previous place is just a showpiece. Everyone came to a conference room. Sergei was already waiting there, and behind him, as always, there were two tyrants as bodyguards. Sit down, everyone. Sergei sat in the chairman's seat, and the others sat according to their positions. The lower the position, the farther away from the chairman's seat. Can you tell us the truth now? The European branch director just sat down and asked in a neither humble nor arrogant tone. Sergei's temperament was not as domineering as before, and he said, "The truth is that you just walked through the gates of hell." The American branch director frowned and said, "What do you mean? Stop playing dumb. The rebirth plan will not only rebirth Umbrella, but also those wavering people in the company." The European branch director obviously guessed something and said, "What does rebirth mean? Could it be that the reason why other ministers and intelligence officers are not here is because of them? They will be reborn, and I think you should be familiar with and guess the method. It is our company's forte anyway." Sergei did not tell everyone the specific situation, because whether it was aimed at them or not, this method of controlling other people's will would only make people disgusted. Sergei's words were very general, so the head of the Americas branch wanted to continue asking, but was stopped by the head of the Asia branch, who said, "I understand. Then we are still alive because we are still valuable, right? Yes, compared to those people, you are more loyal, and this is your greatest value. The reason is that you did not show any fear when facing the death of the traitor, the head of the Oceania branch." No one answered, and Sergei continued, "I said from the beginning that this was the company's decision, but the traitor still intended to disobey the company's decision. And when such people were cleared, most people were afraid and did not look at the problem from the company's perspective. Don't they understand that for those who disobey orders, only death is the final destination? Don't they feel afraid because a continent-level head of the branch was easily beaten to death by you? Humph, just be content. If it weren't for me, you people would not escape the fate of rebirth." Sergei could naturally think of these problems, and Spencer could also think of them. They were just looking for a step. After all, as Sergei said, there is no going back, so naturally all the staff will not be turned into puppets at once, but Spencer, as the biggest boss, can't just change the order he issued out of anger. So Spencer and Sergei will cooperate to act out a scene for Alex outside the video call camera. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting me out.